welcome to the 60th episode of Slime Time Sidequest, an official Dragon's Den podcast. This is one of your hosts, Platty M3.
And this is Yangus, the Legendary Bandit.
Welcome back to our Games Through the Decade series. We've covered games about to hit the legal drinking age, games old enough to be parents, and even those tipping into grandparents' age.
And yet they're still younger than you.
Oh, ouch. But fair. All right, tonight we're fast-forwarding another decade in our reminiscing, and we'll be talking games whose voices haven't even begun to crack with the changes of puberty. These games are so new, half the kids I teach in school are as old or older than them.
That's right, we're moving on to 2014, and even though the games are getting younger, our taste and guests have evolved. No longer are we doing the PB&J from last time. We've gone fusion with our new PB&E guest sandwich.
E? What the heck is the E in PB&E?
Edamame?
I know the peanut butter would kind of help keep things in place, but beans on a sandwich seem to a recipe for one heck of a mess.
Eggplant?
Perhaps if they were sliced and fried, but breaded veggies in between slices of bread seems like just a few too many carbs.
Eel?
Yes, that's the one. That's definitely the recipe we're going with. Peanut butter and eel.
Ick! Ugh. Well, while we let that thought unsettle y'all's stomachs, we're going to try to fortify ourselves by welcoming back Pendy, Bluestar, and Evan. Thanks for joining us all.
Salutations.
Hello.
Oh, boy.
Hey, you write it in the show notes. I'm going to say it.
Fair enough.
Yes. All right, welcome all. While we don't promise to say one of my favorite games of all time, as much as this episode is last, I believe we have a great lineup of games tonight from 2014. You want to start, Platty?
All right, of course. The first game I'm going to talk about is Senran Kangura Bon Appetit.
No. I just said great lineup. Screw it. I'll go first. We're gonna keep ourselves away from whatever Platty's gonna talk about. So you know what? We'll start off with one of the big games from 2014. I'm gonna talk about Super Smash Brothers for 3DS and Wii U.
Yo!
So this one came out towards the end of 2014 in like the fall and early winter months, coming about a few months apart from between each version. 3DS version first, and then the Wii U version a little closer to Christmas time. I want to say it was like a month or two apart, but I don't fully remember. But anyway, game had a pretty big announcement at E3 2013. First trailer they showcased, showed how the game would look and play on 3DS, and then they had a fancy transition over to the Wii U version with the graphics changing and everything. And initially, it seemed like it was going to be a new Animal Crossing game based on the start of the trailer. But then they pulled a fast one about 30 seconds in, showing the villager was officially invited to join the Smash roster. And if that weren't enough, the trailer ended with the reveal of Mega Man and many of his Robot Master power-ups joining the cast to fight all these Nintendo characters. And later that day, Nintendo dropped a surprise mini-trailer for Wii Fit Trainer joining too. So we got a Nintendo character, a guest character, and a weird character all in the same day. It's great.
Sun salutations.
Stretch. I love my favorite tone of hers is the stretch those shoulders. Stretch those shoulders. Stretch those. You can just keep spamming it. It's so bad. But yeah, so both versions of the game. If you've not played Smash Brothers before, quick little explanation of how that plays. Smash Brothers is a platformer fighting game. A little more on the casual side. If you are, don't get a little intimidated by stuff like Street Fighter or something. But it was one where it had different Nintendo characters, and as time went on, just video game characters in general, all joining together to duke it out on various stages based on different properties. So you have from Nintendo, you got the likes of the Mario series, the Zelda series, Kirby, Pokemon, and as time went on, we started to see some guest characters like from the Metal Gear Solid series, from Sonic, and in this game's case, we got to see some Capcom characters join. But we'll get more into that in a little bit here. Both versions of the game have the same Smash Brothers gameplay players have come to know, though with some faster gameplay and removing some of the annoyances from Brawl, such as random tripping, which nobody misses that one, I don't think. But each version had many of the same modes, though with some differences. So both games felt familiar, but had plenty to separate one another and stand out. So for example, Smash 3DS had Smash Run, a mode where you explored around a giant map defeating enemies, gaining stat boosters, and eventually competing in an endgame event that changed each time. Meanwhile, Smash Wii U had Smash Tour mode, a fighting game style take on board games where you would claim territories, gain new characters to add to your roster for final battle, earn rewards to strengthen your characters, and I believe there were sometimes just little events that would occur, like a Metroid would show up and you had to either avoid it or try and defeat it. Didn't play that one as much as Smash Run on the 3DS, but they were both a good little side mode if you didn't want to play classic or regular versus or what have you. And of course, these ones had online play, a little bit better than Brawl's online was. I remember playing a lot of online on the 3DS version and on the Wii U version. And most of the time, the Wi-Fi connection was pretty solid if you were just playing like one or two other people. If you started playing four people, it could get a little hectic, but Wi-Fi has never really been Nintendo's strong suit with these games. But anyway, each version also put a focus on games from handhelds and from home consoles when it came to stage selection and from some elements. So, for example, Smash 3DS had stages based on some of the recent handheld titles like Animal Crossing New Leaf, Zelda Spirit Tracks, the Nintendo Dogs games, Pokemon Black and White and X and Y both had stages. I believe X and Y's was that Lumen City. It was that big central one that's going to be like that.
Lumiose.
Yeah, Lumiose, thank you. And then they had like Super Mario 3D Land and New Super Mario Brothers 2, and they had a Kirby stage that one of my favorite things. It actually takes place inside of a classic Game Boy. So you can either do the classic green screen Game Boy, or if you hold a certain button combo, you can play it in black and white. So that's pretty cool. But a Smash Brothers game is not just a stage; it also comes down to its characters, and we got quite a few new ones with this entry. Good mix of old, new, and some guests. So new characters to the roster included the previously mentioned Villager, Mega Man, who was our first Capcom rep, and Wii Fit Trainer. And every few months, up to the game's release, some new trailers would pop up, usually mixed in somewhere in Nintendo Direct. And leading up to the game, got several new character reveals, including Rosalina and Luma, Little Mac, who was one of the characters that actually got promoted from an assist trophy to playable, so that was cool. Greninja from Pokemon, Palutena and Dark Pit from the Kid Icarus series, Robin and Lucina from Fire Emblem, Shulk from Xenoblade Chronicles, one of my favorite characters, Pac-Man from Pac-Man. He was one of my favorite reveals for sure. You have Mii Fighters, which had a very creative trailer for him with Reggie and Satoru Iwata, R.I.P., fighting each other. We got Duck Hunt, and we got Bowser Jr., and alternate costumes being the Koopalings, who were revealed as new additions as time went on. Post-launch DLC characters included 3 returning veterans, which were Mewtwo, Lucas, and Roy from Fire Emblem, and 4 brand new characters, including Cloud from Final Fantasy VII, Ryu from Street Fighter, Corrin from Fire Emblem Fates, and Bayonetta, who was the last character revealed. Of the 2 versions of the game, I would say I definitely spent the most time with the 3DS one. This is one of my go-to games throughout my later college years. I brought my 3DS with me all the time and would play a few matches in between classes, get Street Pass tags, fight against friends. It's great. It was cool too because way before the game officially came out, I think it was around the time I started college that year, I got an email from Nintendo and it actually had a special little demo code for Smash Brothers 3DS on it. And it came with 2 other codes as well that they were like, oh, if you want to give these to your friends, you can. So I gave one to a friend in college and I gave one a friend of mine from high school. And it was cool. You got to play as 5 of the different characters. Let me think. It was Mario, Link, and Pikachu, and then you got to play as 2 of the newcomers, Villager and Mega Man. So that was pretty fun. It was just a short little demo. You only got to play on Battlefield and just like 2-minute matches, but it was a great way to kind of feel the 3DS version out and kind of get a feel for the controls and whatnot. But this is definitely one of my most played 3DS games for sure. I think the last time I checked, it still holds the top spot for overall playtime on my games list on the handheld. Having Smash on the go was it was great. It was one of those things I'd always hoped for, and it was so much fun. And as much as I like Ultimate, Smash Ultimate, that is, that game just didn't quite capture what made Smash 3DS so much fun to play. And it was something that I carried that around with me all the time. No matter where I went. It was great. Overall presentation of Smash 3DS is also something that really stood out to me. I really liked how that game looked and felt, and how well the gameplay was executed too on the handheld. It still holds up even now, I think. It takes a little bit to load, but once you get in it, you still have that same hectic Smash gameplay. I love it. And with as much content and with how much content is in this game, and with the Wii U version, frankly, I'm surprised that the standard 3DS could even handle playing the game. Because apparently in the background it closes down a lot of stuff on the handheld just so it can run properly. But bottom line though, Smash 4 was a fun time regardless of the system, and one that I returned to plenty, whether it was like at home or my apartment on the Wii U, or if I was out and about, I'd whip it out on the 3DS and play a few matches with friends, or just do a quick little classic run. So yeah, that is my first game. Any of you guys have any experience with Smash 4 for the 3DS or for the Wii U?
Everyone talk at once.
Okay, I'll go. I had both. I think, spent more time on the Wii U version because a lot of what I like about Smash is playing with friends, and having a bunch of copies of the game and a bunch of consoles doesn't always work out. However, I do have fond memories of playing Smash 3DS on the band bus to away football games in high school. So I had to hold my own against the kids in the saxophone section.
I played a little bit of this on the 3DS, and what I do remember about this version is that I saw some people who got a little too aggressive with playing this game on the 3DS and actually breaking it because of how aggressive they were with the controls, which I thought was amusing.
I actually own both versions, but I didn't play very much of both of them. The most memorable part of those games to me was the absolute nightmare that was finding amiibos in stores. You find, I remember passing up on a Kirby amiibo one time, and then I never saw it ever again. And then I decided now I have to buy every single one before it sells out.
Oh yeah,
and that's
FOMO. FOMO hit those things hard.
Oh yeah, wicked bad. And I do remember if you got both versions of the game, they sent you a pretty robust soundtrack, the OST, with Club Nintendo.
Yeah, you got that, and then you also had free access to Mewtwo.
Yes, early access to Mewtwo. I think it was like 4 discs. It was at least 2.
Yeah, it's 2. One of them is for the 3DS version, and one's for the Wii U version.
Yes, remember there's a blue and a red one. Yes.
Yep.
We must have screwed up then, because I have both versions and I don't think I have the soundtrack.
You had to register it with Club Nintendo, I think.
Yeah.
Boo.
Yeah, because then when you did that, that's also how you got the Mewtwo for early on and for free.
Boo.
That was the one good thing you'd ever get from Club Nintendo.
You weren't part of the cool club, Blue.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't.
Now all they have is paper crap on their website.
Well, so much for that. All right. Well, any other Smash discussion before we start our PB&E?
Sounds like we finished smashing.
Yeah, I will say real fast, just because I mentioned it a bit before. So there's always those different Smash Brother character reveal trailers that really get people excited. Mine was, like I said a little bit before, mine was definitely Pac-Man with this game, because he was for some reason Pac-Man was always a character I was I think he'd be fun to have in Smash. And when they had his little reveal where it was first it showed Mario and how he has red is primarily his color, and then blue was Sonic and Mega Man, and then you just suddenly have this yellow dash come across the screen. It's bam, Pac-Man. It's oh my god, it's like a dream come true. It was so I loved too that it was his classic design. It wasn't that weird modern one where he's got the creepy human eyes for just good old classic arcade looking Pac-Man. Was great. I loved it. And then they even had a little thing where him and was it Mr. Game & Watch interact at the end of his trailer, because both of them originated from 1980, 1 year before Mario and Donkey Kong. So that was kind of funny.
The old man.
It is, because and the best part is too in that trailer, Pac-Man at the end of it gives a little thumbs up. Well, then in comes Mr. Game & Watch, who's just perfectly 2D flat, moves it really awkward, movements. Well, Pac-Man can't figure out what to make of him. He's just kind of looking him over and just blinking, what the heck is this guy? Meanwhile, Game & Watch just does whatever he does, just standing there ringing his little bell, jumping up and down. Pac-Man just looks at the camera, just shrugs, and just gives another wink at the camera, and just that's how it is. It's so silly, but I love it. I was so happy that he was in that game. He was probably the most exciting reveal, even though Cloud getting in was pretty cool too. And I'm not even that big of a fan of Final Fantasy VII. Oh, and of course Ryu. I mean, you can't. That was pretty cool in Ryu. I don't know about Pendy if you ever saw that trailer for Ryu coming in, but they basically recreated the opening for I think it was Super Street Fighter 2, if I remember right, where it's that close up of Ryu as it slowly gets in color. It's great.
Interesting. All right. Well, if we're all smashed out and we were talking about old men Pac-Man, then we've got our old man Pendy, who's ready to talk about something from 2014.
Ouch.
It was back in the year of 2014.
He's the only one close to old man Platty.
That's true. That's true. I'm not the oldest, but I'm close.
No.
But yes, I'll be
Pendy,
starting.
what do you want to talk? Sorry.
Yes. No, you're fine. No, I'll be starting out with some Dragon Quest mobile ports. I'll be talking about 4 games here all at once that we got in America and in other markets all during the course of 2014. These consist of the 4 Android iOS ports of Dragon Quest 1 through 4 and Dragon Quest 8.
That's 5 games.
That's 5 games.
Oh, that is 5 games. I can't count. It's okay.
Oh my
God.
Sorry, continue.
We got so many. I can't even keep track of how many that we had.
Dementia's hitting you hard.
It's that old age. I'm forgetting stuff. That's what happens. But for context, this was during a period of time many Dragon Quest fans referred to as the second Dark Age of Dragon Quest. The first Dark Age taking place during the Super Nintendo era, where Enix of America closed up shop and we missed out on 5, 6, and the remakes of 1, 2, and 3. Hey, look, 5 games. I counted right that time. But yes, this second Dark Age started after the North American release of Joker 2 in September of 2011 through the release of Dragon Quest Heroes in October of 2015. There were no, and I want to emphasize this word for a reason, console, strictly DQ-only titles released during that time. I'm not counting Fortune Street, because that was its own little thing, and it had Mario too. We missed out on Joker 3, Theater Rhythm Dragon Quest, Terry's Wonderland 3D, a remake of Dragon Quest Monsters 2, Slime Mori Mori 3, which would have been Rocket Slime 2 for us if we had gotten it, and of course, Dragon Quest 10. For bonus points, I'll even throw in Joker 2 and 3 professional editions while we're at it. In fact, we were lucky we got any Dragon Quest 3DS titles at all, as we didn't get Dragon Quest 7 on the 3DS until more than 3.5 years later after its release in Japan. Constant fan demand for it, spearheaded by efforts such as the famous petition from the Dragon Quest fans of France, was the big reason they changed their minds about localizing it outside of Japan. During this time, there was one bright spot for Dragon Quest fans, and that was the mobile ports of DQ games. We actually started to get all of these starting in 2014, as I had mentioned before. 8 came to us in May of 2014, then 4 in August, 1 in September, 2 in October, and then 3 in December. And if you think the release order of the games is a little wonky, it was in Japan too, with 1, then 8, 2, 4, and 3. 8 on the iOS Android was a big deal for Square Enix at the time. They touted how they were able to take such a big advanced game and have people run it smoothly on their iOS Android devices. The problem at the time was it wasn't always that smooth. You needed some pretty good specs on your mobile device to play it, and even then, a lot of people reported choppy, low frame rates. As a Western gamer, the other thing you have to contend with is that it's basically a port of the original PS2 Japanese version with just a couple of quality of life additions, such as Instant Alchemy. That means no orchestral soundtrack and no voice acting. These days, the game runs a lot smoother, and if you can get past the lack of Western localization improvements that you might be used to from the PS2 version, it's a very easily accessible way to play the game. When it comes to 1, 2, and 3, these are all ports of the versions made for mobile phones during the mid to late 2000s. The mobile versions were all made from scratch back then, when the technology was not as advanced for mobile phone games. This is fine for 1 and 2. Both of those look great, and they aren't missing anything from previous remakes except the little intro from Dragon Quest I Game Boy Color that they had in the beginning. But this is why 3 suffers a bit. It has no TNT boards, and unlike the Super Famicom and GBC remakes, the enemies don't move on screen. It went a little bit backwards in this remake, and that has unfortunately carried through to the Android, iOS, PS4, and Switch ports of it. That is one of the reasons why I'm so hyped for the HD 2D remake that will look so much better overall. And maybe have the TNT boards? We don't know yet. At least there's the new revamped Monster Arena that looks like a ton of fun as side quests go. Anyway, last but certainly not least is Dragon Quest IV. This is a port of the 3DS remake, which was a graphically downgraded port of the PS1 version. While it may not be as graphically detailed as the PS1 version, it is a higher resolution version of the 3DS port. It also has better quality sound than the 3DS version. And for those of us in the West, it actually has party chat, one of my favorite features in Dragon Quest games that have them. For some insane reason, Square Enix cheaped out and didn't bother to include the party chat in the 3DS version out west, or the DS version out west, which is incredibly stupid when you consider 4 has one of the most celebrated cast of characters in all of Dragon Quest. That's just leaving a lot of missed character moments on the cutting room floor, which was unfortunate. Now, what can be a roadblock for fans of all of these Android, iOS DQ games is the touch controls. Personally, for me, I don't think it's a big deal because these are not action games. They're turn-based role-playing games. There's little consequence to not mastering the controls right away. These were also some of my first mobile games, and admittedly, it did take me a bit to get used to it. But once I had done it for a while and gotten used to it, it was perfectly fine. For other people, I wish these had controller support, but unfortunately, to my knowledge, none of them do. I think that would help bring more people into playing them. Overall, I was thrilled to get these games to play on my phone. I had fun with each of them, and I'm thoroughly disappointed we still haven't gotten the mobile version of 7 yet, which is actually a port of the 3DS remake, but with random battles instead of enemies on screen. For those that we do have, it's a very accessible way to play many Dragon Quest games without having to resort to emulation or tracking down older systems. DQ8 is a little pricey at $19.99, but the rest range from $2.99 for DQ1 to $14.99 for DQ4, and they often go on sale for quite a bit less. So who else has had any experience with these?
So I remember being really excited when I heard Dragon Quest VIII was coming to mobile. And that was around the time that I got my first cell phone. Oh. So I'm fairly sure I remember paying the $19.99 and downloading it and being really excited when it goes to like the opening screen and it pans down to Munchie. But I think that was about as far as my phone could get before it could not do the thing.
Yeah.
And I never went.
Yeah,
back,
mine was the same way too,
unfortunately.
Blue.
Yeah, it was not not a lot of phones could really handle it back then. And even the ones that did, it just didn't really play that smoothly at all.
I remember buying 1 and 2 because they were very cheap. Never played them before at that time. And I remember booting up Dragon Quest 2. I don't know why I picked 2 over 1. I was in the middle of my math class. It was college, though, so you were allowed to do that. They don't care if you were sleeping or not. So I just sat there playing phone games while my math teacher talked. I passed, though. That's all I remember about playing Dragon Quest 2.
I think those mobile versions were the first way that I played Dragon Quest 2 and 3 as well. And it was
They just
the
looked
only...
so ugly. I couldn't do it.
I didn't.
At least
I
the
didn't have
controls in
anything
the
to-
Switch version were good. I couldn't handle how ugly they looked, and I wasn't a fan of the mobile controls. I could have done one or the other. I couldn't do both.
Fair enough. I didn't have anything to compare it to, so I was perfectly happy. I did play the original version of Dragon Warrior before that, with some emulation and illegalness going on. But
Shh. Cut that out.
but yeah, for 2 and 3 that was my first experience with it, and now I think I own all the first 6.
Nice.
I didn't have an iPhone at the time when I wasted all that money on Dragon Quest VIII, so if I want Dragon Quest VIII on mobile, I have to drop $20 again.
Now, if you want to play a Dragon Quest 8 game on mobile, you have to spend like $150 for the 3DS version.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's why it's nice that, I mean, these mobile games came out in 2014, still available today.
So I'm having fun here. I'm going through. Remember, we used to do light speed contests on the Den. The first 10 people to beat a game would get the light speed badge. And I remember being so pissed because I got I think I was the first one to get the light speed badge for 8 because I don't think anybody else stuck with it forever. I had a brand new iPad 2 from work and it ran just fine on it. I was just reading. I spent 84 hours on the game to get to the ending, and I remember having maybe 4 crashes the entire time. I never put the iPad in the sleep mode back then. I would just leave it while I was playing. But I'm actually trying to go through and see if anybody else got the light speed badge for 8 at all. But I got the Lightspeeds badge for 1. I was one of the first 10 people to beat 1, 2, and 4. But I remember not getting it for 3, and I was so pissed. It was because out of all these, Pendy, you mentioned 3 came out last, right? Because it was 8 and then 4 and then 1 or something. What would you say the release schedule was?
It did. Yeah, it was 3 that came out last. Yep, in December.
Okay, so I can't remember. Yeah, so it was around Christmas time, and I was like trying to speed through that game and just couldn't. And I remember, I think I beat it an hour or a day after the last person. I was like, no, I've gotten all the Lightspeed badges. and it was that one. Some 10 people. I mean, we had people. We actually had people in the den back then doing it. And Yangus, what I'm finding funny is you and me were going crazy in this Dragon Quest VIII one, back and forth with grammar stuff, all because of your use of the word irregardless. It's like a whole page of posts about the word irregardless. Oh wait, somebody else got it.
I don't even remember that conversation.
Well, I mean, 10,000 posts each. I'm sure we're not going to remember. I didn't remember it till I just scroll it. Somebody else named Beldat. Good job, Beldat. Wherever you are these days, you got it too. Oh,
nice.
Wait, now we have 3. Apple Questria. So I guess a few people got it up. But yeah, that was those are the good old days. All those light speeds, and I just remember on mobile because they were so cheap, and lots of people got them back then, and it was easy to take a screenshot on mobile back then too. Like, oh, yep, I beat it. Snap.
Yeah, and 1, 2, and 3 had new translations for it, and I really liked what they did with those translations. It was pretty good. Just 1 and 2 and 4, I really loved the most out of those. And like I said before, 4, with it having the party members that I loved the most out of the entire series, along with 8 and 11, like to be able to actually have the party chat for them was fantastic, and I love to see them chat away with their different personality types.
Yeah, I only played. Well, I bought all of them, but I only beat 1, 2, and 3. I think I did most of that just for those Lightspeed contests. I'm like, I've played the other versions enough. I should be able to get through this all right. But then I got a good, I played 4, and I got a good chunk through it, and then I stopped, and I got a good chunk through it again, and I stopped. I really haven't felt no desire to go back to it because I just don't care about touch controls. I find it obnoxious, so I'd rather have a controller. And then with 8, I couldn't even get past Munchie getting to the hero because then my phone would keep crashing.
Oh.
Because I remember messaging like you played it. I'm just like, is it gonna count for me at least getting the trophy for buying it?
Yeah. Because we had those trophies too. I had to scroll through all those to figure out which contest this was.
Because I was kind of pissed. I'm like, oh my god, I spent $20 on this crap. I can't even play it on this phone.
That was contest 111.
Yeah.
Purchase Dragon Quest VIII Mobile. Show proof.
Yeah, the touch controls are not for everybody, and like I said, it took me a while to get used to it too. But once I was like, oh, this is not so bad. I had a fun time.
In this topic, there's Mattcraft Pump and Chemco games.
Oh yeah, that was it. That was his mobile phase, hardcore mobile phase.
All right, good times. All right, there's our P. Let's move on to the B. Bluestar, what game do you want to talk about from 2014?
Oh boy. Let's start with Hyrule Warriors. So 2014, actually, when we were going through and making the list for this episode, one of the things that I was like, I think Dragon Quest Heroes might have been that year. It was not. It was 2015. But I'm fairly certain that it had been announced at this point, because I remember sort of noticing that a bunch of series had decided to do Muso style games like right at the same time. So Hyrule Warriors was the Zelda one, and then around the same time, I think they made the Fire Emblem one, which I still have not played. And then just after this was when Dragon Quest Heroes came out. And Hyrule Warriors is a massive game. There's so much content. Oh my goodness. But we played it on the Wii U, and I say we because when you play it on the Wii U, you could have one person with a controller playing on the TV and another person playing on the gamepad. So we did everything in co-op, which was a lot of fun. This was like probably 200 hours worth of co-op for this game or something like that. But there's the main story. It sort of does the same sort of thing that Dragon Quest Heroes does, where it brings in characters from all sorts of different worlds, except in Zelda, it's more like different timelines sort of thing. And then there are a couple of characters that are made specifically for the game, which are all very fun to play. So you have the same sort of style. Every character has their unique weapon uses and abilities, and you can, spend tons of resources to upgrade them. You needed so much money and so many items. But that's besides the point, because you had enough time to play the game and enough levels to do that you would get them eventually. But yeah, we played the crap out of this game. Once you finished the main story, you would I don't know if you started with it unlocked, but after the main story, we moved on to something called adventure mode, which was really kind of neat because they made a grid of levels, and the first map, it was the original Zelda 1 map. And so like each screen of Zelda 1 was a different level, and so you could pick it, do the fight, and after that point, when you completed a fight, you would get some sort of item that would let you maybe progress in the world. So you get a candle, and then you would be able to go into a cave or a bomb and be able to blow up a wall so that you can pass. And so just the ways that you would progress along those maps was very cool. And I think after a couple of months, there were 4 maps, I think, on the Wii U version. And, they made one that was like the Twilight Princess map. There was one that I think was the Ocarina of Time map. I'm not 100% sure anymore because it's been so long. But yeah.
I remember those maps from the Switch version.
Yes.
Like, I didn't get very far in them, but oh my god, yeah, there was so many. There were so many.
And I'm pretty sure we got A ranks on every single map, which is do them all without taking any damage. And when you're playing with 2 people, that's twice as hard because you both can't take damage.
Did you complete the game?
I think so.
Oh my god.
I'm pretty sure we did. Which is one of the reasons why I want to say my brother got the 3DS version and he had that, but I've never played any other version other than the Wii version. So there were a lot of DLC characters that sort of got added after the fact that didn't have as extensive of upgrades as the main characters did, but from what I understand, they did in the next version. So that would be characters like Winkle and Tingle and Twily Midna and all of that good stuff. I keep telling myself maybe at one point I'll want to go back and get the Switch version and play it again, but it's just not on my priority list, man. It was a good game and we had a lot of fun, but it sounds like a lot to do again.
I loved Linkle. I only played the Switch version and with my kids. That was the first. This might have been like the first big game that I played with my kids ever. At least the Switch one, and then we did do the Fire Emblem one afterwards. The Fire Emblem one is really fun because you give a lot of orders and have a lot of. It brings in the tactical aspect of Fire Emblem, just like Dragon Quest. You're casting Dragon Quest spells, and the tactical aspect of it really plays out well for the Fire Emblem ones.
There was so much content in that original Wii U game that when I got it a couple months after it came out, I think I spent maybe 5 minutes on announcement screens telling me I unlocked a character. You unlocked this character. Level cap went up to this. Level cap went up to that. You unlocked this character.
Yep.
Straight up 5 minutes, we just clicking next button, next button, next button. All these new characters they just gave me for free, and all these level caps.
Wait, that's the Dragon Quest level up jingle, isn't it? Yep, there you go. It's late. My brain's shutting down.
All right, but yeah, that was a fun game. Evan and I were just talking today about we're making jokes about Zelda and how he's never beaten a Zelda game,
including Hyrule Warriors, by the way.
And I said, well, I've beaten 2. I might have beat the original Zelda 2 way back in the day. So maybe I've beaten 3, but definitely both of the Hyrule Warriors ones. At least on Switch.
I never played this one, but Blue, you talking about doing co-op for this game makes me sad that there was nothing like that on the first Dragon Quest Heroes. There's no offline co-op. There's no online co-op. There's no online anything. Like that game would have been perfect for that kind of setup. At least with 2, you had some online play. But I wish that had like either offline co-op or even like more of like a set like all the way through the game, like online co-op, where you could like play with someone together from the beginning to the end and level up your characters together, kind of a la like Resident Evil 5 or something like that. But you could go in and help out with different story missions and whatnot. And there was also like what was it called that we actually did recently with some other members of the Den, those special levels?
Dimensional dungeons.
Dimensional dungeons. Those were fun too, but they could have done so much more with both of those games. That was
sorry.
sad.
I ended up getting the plat, and then we never played again. We can still play again if you guys want.
We only had like the two more, I think, to do. Like the more difficult versions of the Dragon Lord and Estark. Yeah, I think that's all we had left.
I think it might have been regular Dragon Lord that we struggled with. I don't know that we
did. We did eventually beat him, but we also tried the harder version of him, and that's where we just got wiped.
Yeah, no, those were that was kind of comical how badly they messed us up.
Yeah, but all the basic ones we did beat at least once, so that was fun.
Yes.
Yeah, I would. I was looking the other day actually to see if there was anybody had at least a menu translate or something for the Switch version of Heroes 1 and 2. I think when the Switch 2 comes out, that would be something awesome for them to rebundle and
something
maybe
with
add
a little more power.
Couch co-op.
Couch co-op.
Yes.
Oh my God, my kids would love playing through these games with me.
Yeah, I heard that Switch bundle just was not developed very well, and it was very sluggish and did not play very well. I heard a lot of complaints about it, but I still would have been fine with it because it had Ragnar. I would have loved to have Ragnar, one of my favorite characters, and I think it added like Malroth as like a special boss battle, and I can't remember if there's anything else.
But yeah, that would be a you know what, you don't have to do much. Just translate it, give a little spit shine, and add couch co-op.
That'd be great.
Pump that out again.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that was really interesting about Hyrule Warriors is the co-op. You think co-op and couch co-op and it's going to be split screen, but because it had the gamepad, we never had to play it split screen. Which was then weird when Age of Calamity came out. We had to do it all split screen. So I mean, I can handle split screen. I'm a big girl, but it's interesting to see to like think that's. Because the Wii U didn't do well, that's probably never going to be a reliable system ever again, to have the handheld screen and the TV screen.
I'm telling you, the Switch 2 needs to be a dual screen, and they should call it the Switch TOO. It's still a Switch. It's just two screens, and it's a Switch 2. It really is. It's a Switch. It really is.
Don't make the Wii U a mistake. Don't do that. No.
Oh, wow. Well, Hyrule Warriors, good game, no matter whether you played it back in the 3DS, the Wii U, or more recently on the Switch. Evan, let's move to your first game from 2014 you want to talk about.
Oh, boy, let me tell you. So I had a way better game that I was originally going to talk about, but I realized I had way more to talk about this other game. So some people, I'm sure you remember, back during the mid to late PS3 360 era, Square Enix published a lot of Western-developed games. Sleeping Dogs was my favorite, but they also did Hitman Absolution. They did the Tomb Raider reboot, I think. But one of the more forgotten games from this time was my game that I'm going to talk about today, Murdered Soul Suspect. So you play as a fellow named Ronan O'Connor. He was a former criminal turned fedora-wearing police detective on the hunt for the Bell Killer. But there's a twist. At the start of the game, you're murdered by the killer. However, instead of passing on to be with his deceased wife, he's stuck on Earth as a ghost until he can solve his murder and catch the Bell Killer. But he's not alone. He's joined by the angsty teenage spiritual medium Joy, who can see his ghost form. Her mother has been working with the police to catch the Bell Killer, and she's now gone missing. Ooh. Ronan and Joy must work together if they want to stop the killer and find her mother. All this said, you're probably wondering what kind of game this is. Sounds like a detective-y kind of game. Well, so since you are playing as a detective, there's a lot of puzzle solving. Not really. I'm lying. There's no puzzle solving. Not really. basically what happens is you're placed in like a crime scene. You know, when you reach a new level of the game, you're placed at a crime scene, and then you kind of find these things all around a room, the ground, whatever. And he goes, this, that. You know, he pieces it together, and then once he's got enough clues together, he deduces based on all that stuff, you know, what happened. It's very simple. You get like, I want to say 3, 4, maybe 5 chances to guess. And if you get it wrong, I think you just go to like a game over screen or you start over again. So there's really no real penalty if you screw up. And puzzle solving is really like you found 10 clues and you have to click on the 6 most important ones. And they kind of all get placed in the correct order. And that's pretty much it for the puzzle solving aspect of it. What it really is it's a collectathon. At least I think it's a collectathon. So basically what you do is there's like a sort of mini open world. I don't know if I'd really call it an open world, but I wouldn't call it I guess you could kind of call it a hub world more like, but it's pretty big for hub world. It's Salem, Massachusetts at night. It is actually, I will say it's probably my favorite part of the game. It's very nice looking. I played it on the PlayStation 4, maybe that's why it looked a little bit better than maybe the PlayStation 3 version of it. And you know, when you're going between cases, you know, if you're traveling from the apartment where you just did a case to another area where you just do a case, you'll find little glimmers on the ground and you pick it up and it's like a clue about the killer or Salem history, or occasionally you might run into a ghost and you have to solve their murder, which is again just finding clues on the ground and figuring out how they died. I think there's a little over 300 or so artifacts. There's 192 clues and 173 artifacts spread out across the whole game. It's about 10 hours of content, the whole game. Like I said, 10 hours is very short. You do not travel to a lot of different locations. There's an apartment, a police station, I think a cemetery, I think a hospital maybe. There's like, and there's a museum for sure. There's like 5 or 6 areas that you travel to. You even travel to a few locations twice even. And pretty much all you're doing is you go to a location, you solve, you know, some part of the case, cutscenes play out. The one unique thing about each separate location is that they each have their own unique ghost story. So you find, you know, 6 boilers in the apartment building, for example, and unlocks an incredibly boring 5-minute read-along that some guy reads to you about how he died. Stuff like that. I know I'm dumping on it, and it's all fair because it's a very lame game, but there's something like kind of, I don't know, I enjoyed it. I think it's very low. It's a very low time investment. Again, you can complete the game in about 10 hours. Do everything. Maybe have a guide in front of you because there's some missable stuff. You'll have to replay the whole game over again if you miss stuff like I did. But you can do the whole game in about 10 hours. You can beat the game in about 5 or 6. And I just kind of really liked the atmosphere for the most part, walking around this like kind of ghostly looking Salem. You do get a few powers, like you can kind of teleport from one area to another. He is a ghost, so he can go through some walls. He can't go through all walls. There's like a really lame in-game lore reason for why he's not able to go through certain walls. The real reason is make it too easy if you could do that. There are sort of enemies. They're like these, what are the ghosts in Harry Potter? Dementors. They look like red Dementors, basically. And every so often in the story, they'll pop up and you have to, how you fight them is you hide in these little ghost fog mists that appear throughout the area, and you have to teleport between them. You can't be out in the open because they'll find you, but they can't sense you if you're in these little pockets of mist. And basically all you do is you come up from behind them, and then you press a button, and I think there's a quick time event, and you destroy them, and that's it. And if you mess up, there is technically a game over, but you reload almost immediately right where you were. So I don't even know why they bothered having that feature in there. But that's kind of the vibe of the whole game. I don't know why that's in this game, but it's in there now, so I'm going to have to deal with it. But overall, I don't know. It was just kind of like if it was 20 hours, I would kill myself trying to play this game. But I think because it was so short, I think it's kind of worth your time, to be honest. It's, at the very least, it's a very easy platinum trophy if you want to get one in an afternoon.
Ha ha!
The other thing I'll say, and this was insane to me, is for some reason there is no in-game map, and I'm not going to pretend that it's so labyrinthine, the town of Salem in this game, but there are some parts that you kind of have to navigate around, and there's lots of corners, and you have to go in through these tiny little alleys to get to certain parts of the map, and so it wasn't quite easy to travel around in this game, to be quite honest. I got very lucky that I was able to figure out where like the last unlockable was without driving myself crazy running around the map trying to figure out where it was. But yeah, it's very easy for you to be like, all right, I have to go to the hospital. To the police station. After the police station. The police station's on the other side of the map. Somehow I'm all the way over here where the apartment is, and now I'm over by the graveyard, and now I'm at the church, and while I'm at the beach, I'm trying to get over here. It was very difficult, and I feel like an in-game map, at the very least, would have made traveling around a little bit easier. But other than that, 6 out of 10, no notes, game of the year.
6 out of 10. You nailed the Metacritic average here. Oh my God, they got 60 critic reviews. This game got some play, and 59.
I probably never would have heard about it if I wasn't like really into Two Best Friends Play Let's Play channel at the time, and they were playing this game and they were like making fun of it because it was very bad. But it was like very short. I think they finished the whole game in like 8 30-40 minute chunks or something like that. So I was like, oh, this is a very short game. So I thought it'd be a fun, spooky game to play for Halloween. And then I realized I cannot believe they did this. You cannot return to the museum after you leave it because that's where the final cutscene is. And for some reason, when you beat the game, it reloads at the final cutscene. So you cannot re-enter an area with collectibles in it. Oh. So once you leave the museum, if you've left something behind there, you can't go and get it. And you have to play the whole game over again. And I was like, I gotta move on with my life here. And I dropped it for 3-4 years, and then randomly I was like, it's Halloween again. Let's get a platinum trophy.
That's great.
So yeah, if you want for Halloween, if you want to play a game that's got a lot of vibes of spooky, but you don't want to play a scary game, this is actually a pretty decent, low stakes, very short, high reward game to play. If you ever wanted to run around as a Irish detective with a fedora in Salem, Mass, this is the game for you.
Does he say milady?
No, but his wife is deceased in the game, and his whole goal is passing on so he can see his milady. And you get to learn all about her. He's got tattoos all over his body that are all the crimes he's ever committed. That's like the only cutscene in the game. Like the only high-value cutscene. So you're watching all these tattoos appear on his body, and it was, oh, he got into a fight. Oh, he did this bad thing. Oh, he did that bad thing. That's why he's got that cool tattoo.
Okay. Well, you murdered that description, so good job.
I'm proud of myself.
If we're talking murdered people and spirits, then we might be ready for my first game of 2024, Yokai Watch 2. Now, this came out in Japan in 2014, didn't come over west until like 2016. It actually came out right around when Dragon Quest VII came out, so I had just started my master's degree, and I remember buying this like within a week or two of Dragon Quest VII, and yeah, I had a new baby. I was bravely defaulting a ton in the middle of the night. Well, my little baby did not sleep. I think I did both bravely defaults back to back. Didn't even get around to it until summer 2017. And I remember starting to play it, and I was going to bring it to London for my 2 weeks of study abroad there. And then I did bring it, but I didn't bring like a converter plug or something for the hotel. And I remember somebody on the den's like, you're going to blow your 3DS up if you try plugging it in over there. So I think I got like a couple hours in and the 3DS died, and nope, I didn't dare buy that. I was like, oh, whatever. I'm here for 2 weeks to study and be a tourist, so I can not play yokai for a bit. And then when I got back, it was I had just bought a Vita, and I tried to rush through this to get to playing Vita games. So I mean, I really did love this game. I love the first Yokai Watch game. The level 5-ness of it all is just what draws me into the yokai series. I always love monster collecting games, and this one is like Dragon Quest Monster, where you have a party. It's not just 1v1 like Pokemon. You have a party, and the battle system is just crazy. It is not turn-based. Your Pokemon are on a wheel. Basically, your Pokemon. Your yokai are on a wheel. They're basically on your watch. There's 6 of them arranged in a circle. And at any given time, your watch has 3 of them pointing up, and those are the 3 that are fighting. And they just constantly just battle. You'll see little things going towards the enemies in front of you. It's just like a Dragon Quest game. Your monsters are on the bottom, fighting the people at the top. But you can use the left and right buttons on the top of the 3DS to spin your watch. So you can spin and have different 3 yokai playing, and you get different bonuses if they're the same or complementary kinds, like fire or water next to each other. So that obviously then changes when you spin the watch. And they each have a power-up that they can, or like a big attack or a skill that they can use, and you activate those by doing little games on the touchpad. Either you got to pop bubbles to do before they can do their healing spell, or you got to trace something really fast before they can do a fire spell or something like that. But I mean, the battles are quite frantic. You're sitting there spinning, like when your yokai gets knocked out, you're like, oh crap, I got to rotate the wheel. So I have 3 fighting, and then I'm like, oh, this guy's power is activated. I can cast that spell or this spell, or it's fun. It looks like turn-based, but it's not. And you're constantly doing something with the touchpad. The game is set in the same Japanese town as the first game, which is funny because by the time you get to the third game, it's obviously a Japanese town, but it tries to tell you that it's America because you're a new boy moving to town. It's like, hey, you just moved here. Of course, this is a town in America, the localized version. So that becomes a real big joke in the third game when the third game is all based about going to America, a new one. So that kind of falls apart a little bit. But the town is the same as the first game. It was very easy to navigate. I was like, oh, I know where everything is. And then in the second game here, this Yokai Watch 2 that I'm talking about, it adds you go into the past. You go to a rural Japanese town that your grandfather grew up in, and you meet your grandfather as a little kid, and you battle yokai, and there's some plot about, saving time and preserving the timeline and blah, 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 blah. Whatever. It's a monster collecting game. It was fun to collect the yokai. They're all puns. It's like they hire the same localization team that does Dragon Quest. And these things are ridiculously punny. All of them have names because most of the yokai are household objects. There might be little anamorphic, or they might be animals like cats and dogs. There's actually a lot of cats. That's the mascot of the series, is that one cat, the red one. But all the things you could have, like a vacuum cleaner that is possessed, and it's a yokai, it's a spirit, and I don't know, I picked a bad one there, but like if you had a vacuum cleaner, it'd probably be like Sucky or something like that would be the name. They just they are punny, but they're on point pretty well.
I remember Cheek Squeak being one.
Oh yeah, and he's got is that a mouse?
I don't remember what it was. I just thought it was funny.
Oh God, there's 1 in 3 that just cracked me up to no end. It's a lion, and he's the one that translates, because like the third one, like I said, it so falls apart. It tried so hard after they set up the first 2 games as, no, you're in America. Of course you're in America. You're playing this game in English. It's America. But in the third game, when your kid moves to real America, they have to make up another name for where he's moving to. And then you can't understand the people for a long time until you get this lion yokai that translates for you, and oh god, I can't remember, but the name is such a ridiculous pun that you're like, wow. Like I literally had to stop, and I had to text a buddy of mine who's in Japan and be like, how did this? Can you look this yokai up, and how did this translate over there? There's no way it got that kind of pun. And he's like, actually, it worked out pretty well over there.
Lionheart, Blazion.
Oh, no. I mean, its name, like, almost sounds like translation or something like that.
Oh, is it Lion?
No. Gosh, this makes for some great yokai. Let me say lion yokai translator. Doo-doo-doo. Oh, man, yokai. Oh, I can't. I don't know, but
guys.
Okay. So whatever it is, the puns are just like they're good. They're Dragon Quest level puns. If you like puns, you like monster collecting games, yokai games are pretty good. I didn't do as a lot of side quests in this because I just bought that Vita, which I got to talk about later. Because what's funny is these games are now recent enough that I can look back on the Dragon's Den and like read all the comments that people made back then about these. But I remember I looked it up, and I did not do a lot of side quests. I was trying to I was like, I just bought a Vita, used off somebody. I got games I want to play. And I blazed through the game and got to the end boss and was about 10 levels under a couple different things that I read. I just got my ass handed to me over and over and over again, and had to, there's a system you could use. I don't know if you could use the play coins back on the 3DS, but you got, there's a little gumball machine, and basically you got to pull out yokai every day. And out of the middle of nowhere, I pulled out an S-ranked healer, and that made all the difference. I just had to grind him up like 20 levels really fast, and using that and like every freaking revive I had got me through the first form of the boss, and the second form went down pretty easily. But yokai, love all the games. I played 1 through 3, and I'm so excited. I found the fan translation of the 4th one. So when Dragon Quest X Offline is finally done, I can't wait to give that a go on my Switch emulator, since they level 5 died and never gave it to us over here.
And Yokai Watch died in general.
Yes, it did.
They were trying to make that a huge franchise, I remember. They're making a big deal.
I was going to say, for a few years over there, it did. And I remember I had a kid in my class when I started teaching where I am now, which would have been about 10 years ago. So probably by 2016, 17, I remember having a kid in my class that played the Yokai Watch games, and the other kids at school made fun of him because he didn't play Pokemon. He played these. And I remember I was like, what? These games are awesome. I was like, Pokemon's for kids.
I'd make fun of him too.
Yep. I would turn around and make fun of the other kids in class. Get back at them.
I remember seeing so many articles before it came out in the West about how it was totally going to replace Pokemon. It was the Pokemon killer long before Temtem or whatever those games were. Mm-hmm. It was Yokai Watch Mania, and I think it came to the West like just as it was dying in Japan. And I remember Nintendo like rolled out the red carpet for it. It had a decent showing in like a Nintendo Direct. And I think they released the first game. It did fine. They released the second games. Those didn't do fine. And I didn't even know there was a third game. I'm learning that for the first time.
The third game got released. Like, it and Persona Q2 were like 2 of the last probably 10 games ever on the 3DS.
And they tried to pull a Pokemon too. They had released one of them. It was like Creepy Bones and
the second one, I believe it was this. Yeah, I believe it was the second one that released twice. And then they even had a third version that combined all that too. They really went all out for that second one, Pokemoning it. Oh, I found the lion. Okay, so the lion that speaks all the language, he was a linguist.
Oh my god.
Linguist. Yep. And whatever the Japanese, it says it here, but it doesn't have any meaning to me. But I remember I got a buddy from RP Gamer that lives over there and teaches English to the Japanese, and he's like, "Oh no," he goes, "I looked it up." He goes, "It pretty much means that." He goes, "There's a synonym for lion in Japan that deals with language, and he goes, it works in both languages." And I was just blown away by that one. Good job, linguist. But that is the end of Yokai Watch 2. That's the end of our first run through here. Yangus, why don't we go scroll all the way back up to you, and we'll go through our group again.
Mm-hmm. It will keep the 3DS train rolling because my next one is also a 3DS game. And it's going to be Etrian Odyssey Untold 2, The Fafnir Knight. Released in Japan in 2014 and 2015 in the States in August the next year. This is a full remake of Etrian Odyssey 2 for the Nintendo DS. Like the previous Untold entry, this game completely remakes the original, changing labyrinth floor layouts, altering and rebalancing class abilities, adding new features such as the cafe and playable classes, and including a new story mode and cutscenes. So basically, it's an entirely new game in the series, rather than an upscaled slap-over port like SMT Strange Journey Redux was a few years later on the 3DS. But I digress. Both stories and both story and classic mode are very extensive. So even if you only play the game once on either mode, you'll get plenty out of it. Story mode has you playing as the titular Fafnir Knight, who, along with his friend Flavio, head to the land of Placard to meet with the leaders of the labyrinth exploration and discover more about the mysteries within Yggdrasil and below in the newly discovered ruins of Ginnungagap. Big theme with this particular game is they use a lot of Norse mythology, because I had to look that up. I had never heard of Ginnungagap before, and I guess it's also related to North because Fafnir. Fafnir is one of the classic things from Norse mythology as well. But yeah, anyway. And of course, Yggdrasil, the World Tree. But anyway, they soon meet Princess Ariana, the gruff protector Bertrand, and the young war magus Chloe. And the five team up to not only help the people of Placard, but discover why the protagonist has been chosen as the new Fafnir Knight after an incident within the ruins takes place. There are various character moments, how everyone is involved with the story events. You get some expanded on elements from the original if you wanted a more straightforward explanation rather than just the context clues of the original. And you get an ending that unfortunately ends on a pretty big cliffhanger for an Untold 3 that never came to be. Yep.
Yeah.
It was literally Untold.
Yep.
Yep,
that was really shot themselves in the foot because all the DLC really set this game had a very mixed reception in Japan because a lot of people over there were not happy about how they handled the extra content, but we'll get to that part. Anyway, Classic Mode, meanwhile, has players experience the original story, but with all of the new bells and whistles of the remake. So you'll be able to go into the brand new dungeon, at any time you want to once that becomes available. You'll be able to access the cafe. You'll be able to do all that good stuff. Players can assemble a team of characters from 15 different classes, 13 by default, including the 12 originals from the original game, and the Sovereign class from Etrian 3, continuing the trend of the first Untold, where it brought a class in from the next entry of the series. Untold 1's case being the Gunner from Etrian 2. You also can have Fafnir as a playable option if he's transferred over from story mode, and there's also the 15th class, the Highlander, which is from the previous Untold game, who was the main character of that one, as a DLC class with some brand new portraits. Quick little side note too, if you do want to play this game, but you don't necessarily have to beat story mode just to play as Fafnir. If you want to use him in classic mode first, all you got to do is just use the New Game Plus feature to start a fresh story mode file, save your game as soon as you can, and then once you do, you can go back to the main menu, use New Game Plus again to transfer your story mode party over to classic mode, and bam, you've got a level 1 Fafnir Knight you can mix in with whatever team of characters that you want. All of the classes have gotten massive overhauls, so weaker classes in the original, such as the Survivalist and Beast, have gotten some really nice improvements to what they can do, especially in terms of damage and defensive abilities, which is what each of them kind of specializes in. The class selection in this entry is definitely one of my favorites from the entire series, as you have so many good options to fit whatever playstyle you have for team building. It's very rewarding for the player. Rewarding the player for thinking about how different classes can complement one another is why I love this game's classic mode so much. And I'd argue that this and Etrian 5 have the best team building in the entire series. But we can't forget about some of the other new changes, though. The Grimoire Stone system from the last Untold game is much easier to use and work with in this game, and can be accessed via the new cafe area in High Lagarde, which will become available after you've made a little bit of progress within the labyrinths. Players can use the Grimoire Stone system to give their characters some skills from other classes, and in some cases monsters, to help them in their exploration. This can be used to also further strengthen abilities characters already possess, making them all the more powerful. With the right setups, your offensive classes like the Lance Connect and Dark Hunter will be dishing out damage like crazy, or your beast can tank hits and quickly heal itself, creating the ultimate self-sustaining tank. That was one of my personal favorite things to do when I played through Classic Mode one time. I didn't realize just how crazy they had buffed the Beast class, and man, that thing can take hits like nobody's business and heal itself back up real quick, so it's beautiful. But speaking of the cafe, gotta mention how nice of an addition this place is. Using ingredients that you find while exploring and after battles, or from one of the collection points throughout the labyrinth, you can craft dishes to help boost your party stats, your EXP gains, prevent status ailments, and so forth. These can help you out, especially the ailment protective meals, if certain enemies and bosses are giving you issues. What's more, you can use the cafe to help earn you some extra money and items by advertising to different districts of Placard. Using the cafe as a hub, you'll be able to help improve the town with supplies, open more areas for advertising, and improve what you get back. Plus, the cafe is just a great place to go thanks to its background music and the chef NPC who runs it, who's one of my favorite Etrian NPCs from the whole series. Sadly, though, the game isn't perfect. For one thing, all of the bosses have way too much health for their own good, and this game was the start of that HP creep that later entries would suffer from. So while some bosses can be weakened with traps inside their boss room, this isn't always the case, and it can sometimes feel like bosses take way too long to defeat, especially if you don't have a team with a high damage output. Case in point, I did my first classic run of the game was with Lance Ganesh, Protector, Alchemist, Troubadour, and Medic, and that's really not an offensive team, so it was hell getting through that just to beat the final boss of the fifth stratum. It was awful. I kept having to rebuild my team. And finally, when I got it, it was just because I ended up finding a way to kind of cheese one of his strategies. But anyway, common theory with the HP boat happened due to the damage that Fafnir and the story party are capable of. Additionally, a lot of the new boss content is locked behind DLC, including a new floor and a new super boss. This was really a big problem in Japan, and that was one of the reasons why the game was panned pretty hard when it came out over there. And I'm thinking that's also one of the reasons why it took so long for it to come over here, because they had to try and figure out, what are we going to do about that? And I think their answer for it was that early buyers of the game, at least here in America, could get all but 3 or 4 bits of the DLC for free. But after that, you had to buy everything, and nowadays you can't even do that due to the closure of the 3DS eShop. Both of these are just real sore points to what was otherwise a really strong entry to the series at the time. But even though I do have those negatives with it, and a lot of other people do. With that all said, though, this is definitely one of my favorite Etrian games in the entire series. The improvements... before I get that, 2 was always a game that kind of stuck out to me because it was a direct follow-up to the first one, really improved on things. Some people were like, oh, it's just like a sequel pack second game. But I really thought the second game, when I played it, even after playing some later ones, really had some nice improvements to the formula. And it was kind of like the Dragon Quest situation where it was still kind of finding its footing, but you could tell, like, okay, they're really starting to figure out how they want to get this to where they want it to be at. And then, the third game really solidified that. But I really enjoyed the second one when I played the original. So it was really cool with the remake, seeing all the improvements and changes that are in this remake, because it felt like a brand new game. It still, has ties to the original, but basically with all the layout changes and all this stuff, it's basically like you're playing an entirely separate game. And but yeah, the improvements and changes, make this feel like a brand new game, which I appreciate that the Etrian team did this, as it creates a wholly unique take on what they originally created with this particular region of the Etrian world. Both story modes and classic mode are great to play through. I absolutely love how all that you can do with the job class system and the team building. It's so much fun to do, and it's just great. It's great just to go back and try and do a classic mode run with a different team setup. The newly arranged soundtrack from Yuzo Koshiro made one of the best Etrian soundtracks even better, and most of the new content is welcomed and really adds to the overall experience, in my opinion. Definitely a game that I love and put plenty of time into. I'm pretty sure this is still my most played Etrian game at like 250 hours total across all my playthroughs.
Whoa!
Yeah, I know. I got a lot out of this game. It was great. Yeah, I got my nitpicks with it, but this is definitely, for me, it's high up there on the list of the Etrian games for me. Like, it kind of fights between this and 5, with what I would say is my favorite of the bunch, but it's got its faults, but I still love this remake. I think that both classic and story mode are both pretty well done for the most part, and I really liked the characters of this game's story mode a lot more than the characters of the story mode from the first game. Especially really all the story mode characters are pretty nice. But yeah, there we go.
Now, Etrian Odyssey 2 has been told. So, thank you for telling us about it.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. Pendy, what do you got up next?
So I'm going to be staying mobile with Final Fantasy Record Keeper, which is the first free-to-play gacha game that I've ever played on my phone. I am cheating a little bit with this one. It did come out in Japan in 2014, but the global edition didn't actually start until 2015, ending its run in 2022. The Japanese version still lives on to this day. It was a fun little game, and your goal was to help restore the records of different Final Fantasy worlds. The game takes place in a Final Fantasy history department with a human researcher you control named Tyro under a Moogle named Dr. Mog. Later on, other original characters would pop up to help you as well. You go into various paintings from Final Fantasy worlds, fight through little dungeons with the classic active time battle system, and relive many classic Final Fantasy boss battles. In doing so, you fight with Tyro and collect various Final Fantasy characters to fight along with you. You could have up to not 4, but 5 in a party. It wasn't limited to mainline games either. Spin-off games were prevalent as well, such as Final Fantasy Tactics. And this was all done in a 2D pixel art graphic style, very reminiscent of the Super Nintendo Final Fantasy games. The gacha element involved equipment. While you could collect all the characters through normal gameplay, various equipment such as weapons and armor would be drawn randomly through the relic draw function. I played it on and off for a few years. I never spent any money on it, so I would eventually hit a paywall where I couldn't really get much stronger and take on the higher difficulty dungeons that they would throw at you. The gameplay loop was very simplistic. There was no actual exploration in the dungeons. You would just hop from fight to fight, so it did get repetitive after a while. But in 2018, they started introducing record dungeons. These were much more in-depth 2D pixel art remakes of classic scenes and dungeons from various Final Fantasy games. Original characters to FFRK like Tyro and Alara would be transported there to live out these scenarios and help restore order. You would fight these original characters alongside whatever character or characters were specific to the scene. So, like, for example, you would go through the beginning of Final Fantasy VII, and it would just be your character Tyro and Cloud fighting in the beginning, in which you control everyone's moves. There was also actually some simple exploration to it, which made it more exciting as well. Since the global edition has ended, I can no longer recommend the game outside of the Japanese version, but so goes the way of F2P gacha games, especially in the West. On a side note, I did see they did a collaboration event with Dragon Quest of the Stars in around maybe 2018 or 2019 timeframe. You could fight enemies and bosses from Dragon Quest 1 through 3, and they even changed the battles from active time battle to straight turn-based just for that, since it was Dragon Quest. However, it looks like since it was before Stars went global for us, they didn't bring the collab over to the global version of FFRK, which is too bad. So did anyone else ever try Final Fantasy Record Keeper back when it was available? Or just maybe me?
No.
Yeah, this is what got me into those games a little bit. I played this one. I played another Final Fantasy gacha game, Brave Exvius, which also had some Dragon Quest crossovers as well that they actually did bring over to the West during the Dragon Quest XI timeframe. And then eventually this got me into playing Stars and other games that would come over here. Oh, and then, like, of course, there was a Southeast Asian version of Dragon Quest Monster Superlight that I played as well, going into Tact and whatnot.
So this was your gateway drug.
It was my gateway drug to gacha games. And since Tact has closed, I haven't played any since. So I just ended up being a phase, or at least until the next Dragon Quest game comes over here. But I doubt that will happen anytime soon, unless they bring over Walk. But I don't see that happening.
Probably not these days.
No, it's still Walk is still immensely popular in Japan. It's just too bad we never got it here.
Yeah, Liam's theory about it. He thought before the pandemic that they might.
Yeah, because
I remember it was earlier that Yuji Horii was in New York or something.
Yeah, he did a visit, and a lot of people theorized it was because they were preparing Walk to maybe come over here. Don't know if that's true, but that's what the rumor was at the time.
It could beat Pokemon Go.
Yeah, probably not.
Harry Potter couldn't beat Pokemon Go. I don't think anything can.
Yeah.
Not here anyways.
know.
I mean, walk is more popular than go in Japan, but I don't see that happening here, of course.
Alrighty, let us walk on over to Bluestar's second game. Blue, you got a few there still. What are you going to talk about next?
Let's do Child of Light next. So
Yay.
yeah. So I guess I should put the disclaimer that I have not actually played this game, but I watched my brother play through the whole thing.
Oh my god.
What the heck?
I know. I'm sorry. But it's the overworld kind of plays a little bit like a Castlevania Metroid game, at least with like the 2D platforming and navigation. But it has turn-based battles. And you get party members, and you're doing some side quests, and trying to solve the mystery of this world that you've suddenly been thrown into as a young girl. The vibes are just really good in this game. It's just really pretty, exploring sort of cell shaded, artistically drawn, stylized characters. It's just a really fun sit down sort of story to run through. The battle system is unique. You have your main character, and you can pick a side character to fight with them. The characters are all great. I know based on the notes here that Platty has a favorite, and it's hard for this not to be the favorite, so I can agree with that. But yeah, you're essentially a human girl from the real world, and you suddenly wake up and you're like, where am I? What's going on? Where's my dad? How do we get out of here? And you run around for a little bit, you end up finding a crown, and suddenly you're able to fly. So you're now flying around this world in this 2D platformer, which is now not really a platformer because you can fly. But it's just kind of a big mystery to solve the entire thing. It's a lot of fun. And I wasn't even the one playing, and I thought it was fun.
So we've got a side quest to our side quest with games we watched in 2014. I like it.
In her defense, I would say the gameplay is the least impressive part of the game. I think everything else around it was more impressive. Like, I think the best way I would describe how the game's like visual style is, it's kind of like a watercolor picture book of fairy tales, basically.
Oh yeah, picture book is definitely
Yes.
For Blue to watch it, it's perfect. It'd be like somebody reading you a book, but you're watching it happen.
It definitely, I think Platty agrees with me on this. It felt like because this is a Ubisoft game. It was like part of their Ubi Arts thing, I think. It felt like a sort of like a proof of concept. It felt like we can make this kind of RPG. It was kind of short. I think it was like 10 hours. There are side quests, but not really. Collectibles, but not really. Gameplay was good, but it was kind of half-baked. There wasn't a ton of boss fights. It felt like it was kind of like, here's what we can do. I'm like, all right, where's the next one? And it never came.
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
It's interesting bit of trivia. I think the only physical version of this game before it was a double pack with Valiant Hearts on Switch was Vita. You could only get it physically on Vita, but it was on most every other console. I think you can get it on Wii U.
We had it on Wii U.
But the less pretty but still very pretty version was available on Vita as an actual cart. You could insert into your Vita system. No platinum trophy though.
No, I was going to bring that up. Yeah, this is the only. I've never gotten any platinum trophies, and I was almost a little excited at the end of this because I got all the trophies. It was like, oh my god, I got all of them. So I mean, I got platinum, and looking through, I was like, oh, it doesn't have one. So
it was like during that period of time where like shorter indie games usually didn't have platinum trophies. One more thing I would say is that OST was godlike. I remember after I finished the game, I think I bought the soundtrack off like Bandcamp or something. Like, I own the disc. It's lovely music. I love listening to it.
This was a game I played with the volume up. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's just an experience. I mean, I guess like Evan was saying, it's not. It was kind of a proof of concept, and so there were things that, like, you see it and it's like, oh, they could do so much more with this. But just the experience of, like, seeing this world and, learning about, the lore and the soundtrack and all of that together is what made it really memorable for me.
It is a fully fleshed out game, but it really, like, you do get a beginning, middle, and end, but it really feels like you've got a handle on, all right, the combat's feeling better, not amazing, but it's pretty good. It's functional. You're starting to see more side quests pop up, stuff like that. So you're thinking, but then all of a sudden, oh yeah, end of the game. Game's over. We're at the end game now. And I was like, really? There could have easily been an extra 10 hours to this game.
So since this was kind of like a proof of concept game, was there a sequel or any kind of spiritual, not even like a spiritual successor to it or anything like that?
So what Ubisoft was doing during the time was letting small groups of developers in Ubisoft make games.
Yeah, there was like this one, Valiant Hearts. There might have been one or two more. I know EA does this now, where they have like they have a lot of smaller indie games like that Thread game, Unwound, Unbound, something like that. But they have like their own EA art. It's kind of like how actually Square Enix had their own like indie, wing, I Am Setsuna and stuff like that. I used proof of concept. I don't think that was what it was intended. I think it was meant to be a fully fledged game. But when you play the game, you can't help but feel like this is trying to like almost prove itself that we can make this kind of game. You just and they could do more with it, but they didn't for some reason. Like something was holding them back.
I'm gonna guess money. I'm gonna guess, Ubisoft said, "Hey, you 20 people, we'll give you 1 year, make a game," and they made it. And whatever, I'm sure it's based on economics. I'm sure this game did not make X amount of money compared to the cost for them to say, "Okay, now make another one, but twice as big," or something like that. It was probably the bean counters were like, well, if you put these 20 people back on that game over there, that one's gonna sell 5 million, and these people could make 20 side quests for that, and that'd make it so much. But I don't know. Those developers never got a shot.
Yeah, it was developed by Ubisoft Montreal specifically, and they're like in the they're kind of in the Assassin's Creed, Far Cry minds right now, the Tom Clancy minds. They're not really making other games other tan that now. Well, Ubisoft in general really aren't making games other than that now.
Oh, that's too bad. I vaguely remember this getting a little bit of hype when the trailers came out initially, if I remember right.
Well, yeah, that was like in a period where indie games, because this game came out in 2014.
2014.
This is before like this was like just as indie games were kind of like starting to pop off, and there's a lot of games that look like this now. Like there's a lot of similar games now that kind of go for this artistic, picturesque kind of aesthetic, but this was kind of like one of the early ones. Like it did things like all the dialogue, I believe, rhymed.
Not all of it, just specific characters.
Well, no, it was all but one, wasn't it?
Oh, no.
I think it rhymed all the way through.
Actually, yeah, you might be right. It was all in verse, except for the bard character.
Yep. I have a little verse I'll read at the end when we're done, but yeah, Rubella specifically, and I don't know if it addressed it in the game, but specifically broke the rhyming pattern because every character the whole way through did it.
So they used a special game engine called UbiArt Framework, and the games developed on it are Rayman Origins, some random apps, Rayman Legends, Child of Light, Valiant Hearts, and then it's just Dance all the way down. Yokai Watch Dance, Just Dance special version. That's an interesting crossover. I would absolutely love to watch Nintendo Direct one day, and they just go, "Oh yeah, we're doing, Child of Light 2, Teenager of Light, I don't know, Young Adult of Light."
There you go. You could get preteen of light and then teen of light. You still go.
Kind of like
college co-ed of light.
It's like Inside Out
quadrology here. You can keep going. Yep.
Middle-aged of light.
Pendy's old man who can't count of light.
Of dimming. You got to put the dimming in there, like, retirement with dim light, just total darkness.
You forget how.
Well, that turned. I remember what drew me to this is I kept seeing the gameplay or the battle system be compared to Grandia just because it had the bar at the top and the people moving across the bar for when it was your turn. But it didn't feel like that at all because you weren't moving or anything. It was just stationary character. It was a turn-based battle.
Yeah, wasn't it like a real-time battle or something like the Final Fantasy
No,
type combat?
I was gonna say you're right. It's more like the Final Fantasy, the active time, but with pause because it would pause for you to do your commands.
Yeah, like I think if you did like a really big attack, you would take up more of a meter, and then the enemy can attack more or something like that.
And when they were getting ready to attack, it took a couple seconds, and if your person could attack them while they were doing their little charge up to hit you, it would knock them back down the bar. So if you played your cards right for a while, you might be able to actually cancel a few attacks. But I think you could only have 2 people at a time battling, so it wasn't. I think
you had a big party, and you only had you could only use 2 characters.
Yeah, you could swap them in and out at any time, but yeah, it was very. And I know I got the deluxe edition for Vita on sale one time for like $8, and it came with, was it a golem? I think it was a big stone guy, and oh my gosh, he was so OP.
Yeah, I think luckily I didn't use one particular character. Based on story stuff, but I think I used I remember like some sort of like short gnome guy. I think I used him a lot.
There's also Rubella's brother, who is Jester but sad Jester.
Mm-hmm.
He was just very depressed, which was kind of a stark contrast to most everything else in every other character.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I know what character you're talking about, being thankful that you didn't use for story reasons.
All right. Well, before we move on to Evan's second game, I'll read my little prose, my couplet. No, not couplet. Who knows? Whatever. I have a little. Is it a couplet?
I mean, I guess it's not an iambic pentameter, but close enough.
I tried. I had to do something to break the rhyming pattern here. So, I'd heap more praise upon this game, but Bluestar said it all. Everything was so amazing, from the meta down to the small. Played it on my Vita. 'Twas a short but special time. To get a proper sequel, I'd spend down to my last nickel. And that's how all of Rubella's lines were. You in your head, like reading the lines in my head, I'd read what word it would be, and
there was always
Rubella just purposely did it. Yep, always ... and then the word that break the rhyme. But it was always something glaringly obvious, like, oh, obviously the next word would be this, and it never was. I can't remember if there was a story reason or something. Was he like, or she trying to break the?
I think she was a really bad entertainer, and she just couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
And the character that you play as, she was just like, "You come with me. Hopefully, we'll be able to. You'll be able to get better at rhyming and entertaining if you follow me around."
All right. Well, talking about little kids going on journeys, might as well get to Evan, not the little kid, but what little kid game did you play?
Oh, boy. Speaking of little kid games and mobile games, I'm going to be talking about Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire.
Mobile games?
It's a mobile game. You're playing on your 3DS. You play it mobily.
That's what us old farts called mobile before there were mobile.
Okay, fine. You can be old farts.
Phones took over the name.
So just for simplicity, I'm just going to refer to it as Oris for the rest of this, not Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire every time. But
Howard.
Oris.
So these games came out shortly after I was getting back into Pokemon. I took a hiatus during the Black and White era. It was like that era where it was uncool at at my age at that time to play Pokemon. So I kind of dropped off it for a while. And then kind of around Pokemon X came back. For some reason, I don't know, I just kind of felt like getting back into it. I picked it up. I liked it well enough. I wasn't I wasn't a huge fan of it. But Gen 3 is kind of like one of my favorite generations. I would still give it a 2, but I think overall, just creatively what was going on with the Pokemon brand at the time, Gen 3 was probably my favorite because it had so many great spin-offs coming out and stuff like that. They were throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks in terms of types of games. So anyways, I really loved Gen 3 games. So when they were like, oh, we're remaking Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, I got really excited. I just really loved the way the game looked. I liked they tried new things with the villain groups. I liked they tried to do more with the story. That was kind of when the story kind of became more important. My favorite Pokemon, Blaziken, is from that game. So I was pretty psyched up to play the remakes. And then when I picked up the remakes, I just kind of played through the story really quickly, did the post game, and didn't pick it up again for a few years. And that kind of killed my enthusiasm for Pokemon again for actually longer than my original hiatus. I totally skipped the Alola games. I think the next game I played was Let's Go Eevee, which I talked about. I really loved that game. And then Sword and Shield, which I also really loved. And it wasn't until I played those Sword and Shield games that kind of clicked in my head why the Oris games and the 3DS era in general kind of bothered me. And that is there are too many Pokemon and the game feels incredibly stiff to play. So just to explain, Gen 3, the original Gen 3 games, has probably the most ridiculous requirements to complete the National Pokedex. You can make an entire YouTube video with millions of views just about how you had to, everything you had to do to get all those games, to get all those Pokemon. You needed access to both Ruby and Sapphire. You needed a GameCube, you needed a GameCube link cable, and you needed a copy of Pokemon Coliseum and Pokemon Gale of Darkness, because both games have one Pokemon that you can only get in each of those games to truly complete the National Pokedex. And you have to do some messing around with like replays, starting the games over again. I think you also are like required to have at least one of Pokemon Fire Red or Leaf Green. I think it's a little bit easier to get Emerald. But anyways, it was incredibly complicated to complete the Pokedex at that time. And originally, what I liked about the remakes was that you only needed the 4 Pokemon games from Gen 6, the Oris games, and X and Y to complete the Pokedex. Problem is, it's like 800 Pokemon, 700, 600. There's a lot.
It's like 600.
Yeah, it's a lot compared to Gen 3, where it was like 380 or something like that. And my brain was like, I was like in pain how ridiculous it was to get the legendaries. It used to be that like getting a legendary was like a big deal, and there'd be post-game stuff, and they'd be in like these unique dungeons. And then it was just, I think there are about 20 legendaries you can catch in Oris, and almost all of them are like you're flying in the air and a giant portal is just up there in the atmosphere, and you fly into it, and then they're just standing there, dead center, and you walk up to them, and that's it. Nothing felt special about catching them, and that was kind of like what the whole game felt like. I feel like every like 6 months or so, I'll pick up the game again. I'll catch about 10 or 20 more Pokemon, and then I'll drop the game again for another 6 months or so, because there's just so many of them. The games, as I mentioned, feel very stiff. I don't know what that is. I think maybe it's just having to do with the 3DS controls in general. It really feels like your character is moving very slowly and very stiffly as compared to when I was playing Sword and Shield, and I was like flying all over the place, and the space was a lot bigger, so that you could go a lot faster around. There's more buttons to press, so they could assign buttons to easier to reach buttons, whereas you have to click this button and that button. It just felt like kind of the layout of the 3DS kind of killed the momentum when you play the game. So the gameplay feels very rough. Like the way you move feels very rough. And then also it's like a huge chore to collect all the Pokemon in this game. That's why I really appreciated Dexit when Sword and Shield came out. They cut it down to a easy 400 Pokemon, and I think they added 100 in each DLC pieces. Like there's 100 in each piece of DLC, and in Sword and Shield. And even though it's kind of you do kind of collect the legendaries in in the second DLC of Sword and Shield in kind of a lame way. You do Gigantamax battles or whatever. It's still really fun to play those Gigantamax battles with people. So at least it's a rewarding experience catching them as compared to flying into a portal, saving the game in case you accidentally cause them to faint, and then just throwing Ultra Balls until they go in. I'm talking a lot of smack about the game, but I did enjoy a lot of stuff about those games. I think my favorite feature they added, which I think is my favorite feature that hasn't come back, is the Dex Nav, which is the way they used the second screen for the 3DS was it's a little map of the game where you're at, the route you're on, but it looks like the way the route looked in the original GBA games. And they use the GBA sprites as representative of the Pokemon that can appear on that route. So if you encounter a Pokemon but you don't catch it, it just shows up as a little shadow. If you catch it, it fully fills in. And there's a little indicator to tell you how, if you caught every Pokemon on the route. So it was a really fun way of tracking if you've caught everything in that area, and you would know, all right, I got everything here, and time to move on to the next area. And then when you finish the game and you get the National Dex, it unlocks more Pokemon in some routes. And there was like there's a feature to it where you can kind of like sneak up to Pokemon, and if you're careful, they won't run away. And that was how you got like kind of the Gen 5 or 6 Pokemon sometimes through that. And that was like one of my favorite features, going around to every route or every cave, every body of water, and catching all the Pokemon that were available there. And it was actually also you could chain catch Pokemon to increase your shiny odds. And what was cool is if you accidentally bump into a Pokemon that's not that Pokemon, if you run away, it maintains your chain. So it's very forgiving. Kind of like one of the most iconically difficult Pokemon to get in Gen 3 is Feebas. In the Oris games, it's actually probably one of the easiest, if you know what you're doing, it's actually probably the easiest Pokemon to catch. And it's very easy. You can do it in 20-30 minutes to get a shiny Feebas too. I also, I know I was just talking smack about flying into portals, but I liked that feature of you catch, similar to the original games, you can catch one of the Latios Pokemon, and the other one is a companion who flies you around in the air. So you can actually fly over the map, and you can sail down to locations. You can go to, you can discover new areas, new island every day or so. There's a new island that will appear. It'll cycle through, and you can go to that island, and there's like 2 or 3 unique Pokemon that are part of the National Dex rather than the Hoenn Pokedex. And has great music too when you're flying around. It's one of my favorite piece of music in that game. So while you're flying around, you get to listen to a really nice theme. I do appreciate that they added a pretty robust post-game story. Initially, it kind of bothered me that they made a mythical Pokemon just a regular old legendary, but then I realized that they did a really cool job of integrating that Pokemon into the game's like story, and it was a tough battle too. So I felt like it was a rewarding experience adding that. And also, I think this was also the game where they added to the lore that the other games are alternate realities. I think that was part of the lore of the Delta episode post game stuff. So yeah, in conclusion, Hoenn is a land of contrasts.
Right, they had a demo for this, didn't they, back in the day?
Yeah, I think it was like a unique demo with like certain Pokemon or something like that, and I think it was items or whatever carried over when you got.
I want to say, yeah, it wasn't part of the game at all. It was just a little vignette, 30, 60 minutes, something like that. And man, I want to say this is the very first game demo I ever played.
Not even the Final Fantasy 12. Oh, for 3DS.
Oh, no, I would have, you know what? You're right. I would have played the Dragon Quest one too. Way back. Sorry. This has got to be at least the third, because I played Dragon Quest 8. I remember going to get that demo for the PS2. And then, yeah, I played the Final Fantasy 12.
I think my first demo was Tomba 2.
I guess this is the first one that I was able to download. Like, oh, look at this. Let me just download it.
It was hard
'Cause I didn't
listening
have-
to all that smack about Oras.
It's they're okay. I love Gen 3. It's a vibe. I know the meme is there's too much water, but I really do like the water vibe of the game. It has like sort of like a aquatic resort kind of feel, like Slate Port and stuff like that. Very festive vibe to it. I don't know how to describe it. I just like the vibe of the water aesthetic. How you can
Blue, A+.
Oh boy, that's your IGN review. Too much, not enough blue.
That's great.
Yeah, this was the last game that I completed the national dex in. It was also the second one. Because the only one I did before that was Soul Silver. So I've got lots of hours in this game.
It's the national dex. Let me tell you, that's one day before I die, I will 100% complete that national dex. But it is just so brutal. I have fought the Elite Four a million times. I think there's a better way to get XP, but that's how I grew up, getting XP in games. Okay, battling the Elite Four with XP share. Back in my day when we could
When
only
the
level
XP share only leveled up one Pokemon, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, those Gen 2 games, you know.
I honestly don't remember what I did to level up.
I think it was something like there's
I remember
a map
I
shared
called up
around
gym
online.
leaders all the time in Soul Silver. I called them up and kicked their butts over and over and over and over again, and they would still answer my calls. I don't remember what I did in Oras. However, there's a good chance that I transferred a decent amount of stuff from Soul Silver into the other games, and that helped me complete the dex a little bit more. So maybe there's just less work to do.
Yeah, I didn't play Black or White or Black 2 and White 2. So I didn't have that bridge game to transfer my Soul Silver Pokemon to and then transfer through the Poke Transporter. You needed Gen 5 games.
Actually, that's a good point.
So my Gen 4 Pokemon are kind of stuck there. So I only had X, and I think I got both Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, actually. And I actually I think I took like 2 or 3 days, not 2 or 3 hours, where I went through like a list of every Pokemon and what games they can only be found in. And I think I narrowed it down to only like 4 Pokemon that I couldn't get. And I think some kind soul on the Den. I think it might have been Jay traded with me. Someone traded with me for the Pokemon that I couldn't get in Pokemon Y, I believe. So it is within my power to complete the game. I just haven't gotten around to it. But yeah, I think
the power.
I do. But I think, if I remember correctly, I think they kind of expanded the base feature so that you can like download other people's bases with like a QR code or something like that. And there was like a QR code going around, I think, that downloads like an island or something, I don't know, that has like a bunch of chances on it or whatever, so it's good to level grind on because they give a lot of XP.
Oh, the friend types.
I think so.
I was really sad because my friend's one was like normal type or something really lame, and I was bummed about it.
Yeah, because there were like certain Pokemon. I definitely remember that was like a feature in X, like friend parks or something like that. And I think you got one type, and then obviously you ask for your friend's type or whatever. But there were like certain Pokemon you could only get that way. It was like a harder version of trading because you couldn't even ask your friend to trade you a specific Pokemon. You had to hope your friend had the right type of park or Safari Zone or whatever it was that had the Pokemon that you needed. It was so frustrating.
Yikes. All right. Well, let's keep this moving on. That was good stuff. I played those games too. They were good. I did not go to the extent you two did. I don't think I even did any post game. That was
It's a good post game. I thought it was a good addition. It's a fun little 2-hour story or something like that.
And you get to fly.
You get you get Mega Rayquaza, which is like the most busted Pokemon in history. I think it has its own class in competitive Pokemon because it's so overpowered.
I remember buying the strategy guide for this just like 2 years ago because I found it for like $10 and tried to get my son to play, but he was too much into the Switch by then. I got him to do Ultra Sun and Moon, but not go this far back, unfortunately.
To this day, I still haven't done Sun or Moon. I have Moon, I think. I played a little bit of it. Never finished it though.
I don't think I finished Moon either. I like almost. I think I got the legendary, but I don't know if I like actually rolled credits on it.
I didn't like that game's special, unique feature. It was like, was it
Z
Z type?
moves.
Yeah, Z moves. Yeah, they were fun, but they were like pretty much okay. I'm gonna finish this fight now by using my Z move, pretty much.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with my second game and kind of, as a lot of us have been talking, 3DS games, except for Pendy. Bring it back to something that Yangus talked about before, an Etrian Odyssey kind of clone. I played Persona Q that came out that year. I want to say it was Japan in 2020 or in 2014. But in 2014, tried to have my summer of 4. And I tried playing SMT 4 and Rune Factory 4, and there was another 4 that came out right around then too. And this just kind of got lost in that. And SMT 4, I didn't play for until I think spring of 2015. And this game, I had a lot of fun looking back in the den to see why I got it and how. What's funny is Evan and Yangus are two people that in the topic that I made about this or brought it up. I think it was the currently what are we playing topic. There was a good 30 posts. I know, Evan, you were like, what the hell are you looking up? A couple weeks ago when I started researching this one. But basically, Persona Q has all of the party members from Persona 3 and 4, and they're thrown into an Etrian Odyssey. It's a Etrian Odyssey game, basically. It's a first-person dungeon crawler. You got a lot of party members. There are social link things to do between dives into the labyrinths. Just like there's stratums in an Etrian Odyssey game, there were different like time periods in this one. You'd beat one area, and then suddenly the cultural festival was going on in Persona Q. So it would all be cultural festival based dungeon crawling. And God, the creepiest one was the frickin' there was a hospital themed one, and I want to say there were like baby crying things, and God, these stupid FOEs that usually appear in Etrian Odyssey, they were like really a pain in the butt in the hospital version of this game. There's a lot of stepping into the light to avoid them, and the puzzles were they were a little bit tough. I definitely was glad I played this a little bit after and relied on probably some game FAQ people and stuff they had posted ahead of me playing it, that is, to get through. But this is just going back through this. It was pretty funny because 2015, the summer I played it, and I remember back then it used to take like 10 to 12 days if I wanted to ship something from Amazon to my parents' summer place up in North Carolina. They're pretty rural up there, and Amazon just couldn't get stuff to them even in a week. So it was the first thing I shipped up there, and I remember like a week and a half before even going, I was like, I better ship this up there. And it still came a couple days after I got there. But my son was 2 that summer, and he learned that week, the first week we were there, to climb out of his crib. And it was also the first summer that I think we had my sister and her 2 kids and us and our 2 kids and my parents up there. Actually we only had 1 kid at the time, but there was 9 of us. There were only 3 bedrooms. Later my parents would expand to another bedroom, but my wife and I had to sleep on this old couch that like bent together in the middle, and my son learned to climb out of his crib, and then he just wanted to lay in bed with us, and we couldn't put him back in a crib anymore. And I got sick, and I just remember I couldn't like sleep in this mattress. It was just killing me. My allergies were horrible, couldn't breathe. So I ended up sleeping outside in my dad's car for like 5 or 6 straight nights. I just it was in the garage, and it's like 50 degrees up there in the summer in the mountains. So it was beautiful. I could just prop myself up in the car so I could actually breathe at night. And I was like, well, if I'm in the car and I'm not having to deal with the baby and all this stuff, I just sat and played my like 3DS for 3 to 4 hours. I played till like 3 in the morning. And then no matter what was going on in the house, nobody would wake me up till like 9 or 10 when it was time to go somewhere. So, but honestly, I don't have much more to say about the game, but reading through the topic on the Den about this was absolutely hilarious. Because I was playing the SMT4. I was actually beating the final boss when I brought this up. and Yangus and Necro Banana, among others, were trying to get me to buy Strange Journey. They were like, "Oh man, if you like SMT, you got to buy Strange Journey. You play Etrian Odyssey, whatever." I bought that one twice. Never could get good enough to get through it. I think I put 20 hours into it, both from the DS and the 3DS re-release. But while I was battling Lucifer at SMT4, I actually ordered the game, actually paused it, ordered the game. And Yangus is like, "Come on, man, you won't get the jokes. You never played Persona. You shouldn't really play it." And then Evan right here, he's like, "I'm not saying what you already heard. Talking about the, what do you say? Not that I'm saying what you haven't already heard, but the issue with Q is it's like starting a book halfway through. It doesn't really lean on the plot of either game, but assumes you're aware of the world surrounding it. On the bright side, maybe playing Q will want you to play 3 and 4, which the next summer I did because I got my Vita the next summer and played 4. And then God didn't play 3 until 2022. But that's funny that you said that. And Yangus, and this goes right along with our podcast tonight, Yangus's comment to me was, "You better order Etrian Odyssey Untold 2 while you're at it, because the game comes out on August 4th, and it's going to have a number of DLC for free for a week after release." So look at that, even an Etrian Odyssey call out too when I'm talking about ordering Persona Q. So I also, Evan, found a post where I said my quote, "My console days are behind me. Yay for handhold, but I really don't want to buy a Vita."
Oh,
Your comment, you should really look into it. And I did.
I was very wise back in the day.
You were, yeah. So just looking
what happened?
up.
My parents did the same
Pokemon
thing.
Had to scramble to hit the unmute button for that one.
I can't be too hard on you after all these years now, Platty, because I had not played Persona 3 before I had played Dancing in Starlight. So, and that is also a fan service game. That
and I did all of those. Yep. Well, I had played 4 at least beforehand, but then I went from like Persona Q to Persona 4 to Persona 3 and 5 dancing. I was all out of order on these things.
I remember I had just finished Persona 4 Golden on the Vita, and I had this whole like roadmap in my mind. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna bang out the 2 arena games, and then I'm gonna play Q while we're waiting for Persona 5 to come out. It's just around the corner. And then Persona 5 didn't come out for another 3 years, and I never finished Persona Q, and I never played Persona 4 Arena Ultimax.
I haven't done the arena games. But I did all 3 dancing games by now. Those are crazy fun.
There's lore in those arena games.
Yeah.
Teddy is tolerable in that game. He actually has like the best storyline in that.
That's got to be fake.
No,
that can't be true.
You better dance. You better get to dancing, Blue. Get to dancing. But no, Persona Q was even not knowing anything much about the plots or anything. I had a fun time with it. It was Etrian Odyssey cross Persona, and I was such a Etrian Odyssey fan that this was done well. This is I've got a couple that I will speak for like 1 minute on later. Dungeon crawlers that absolutely sucked, but this is done like a Etrian Odyssey. It's done really well. So, and years later, Persona Q2 would be done even better. So both of those are highly recommended 3DS games. All right, not everybody's got a third game to talk about, but going back up, you skip over Yangus and Pendy. You have a third game, and hey, we're right back to the 3DS again.
Yes, I'm breaking away from my mobile trend, but keeping it handheld with Bravely Default. It is a game that I had no idea almost didn't see the light of day outside of Japan. We didn't even get the first version of the game that came out in 2012. This was called Bravely Default Flying Fairy. An expanded version came out in 2013 called Bravely Default for the sequel. This was localized, and we got it in North America in February of 2014. It was a Silicon Studio game published by Square Enix in Japan and by Nintendo over here. This game takes place in a world called Luxendark, and much like some of the old school Final Fantasy games it was inspired by, you have to figure out why the 4 elemental crystals of this world are being consumed by darkness. In fact, it was originally going to be an action RPG sequel to Final Fantasy, The Four Heroes of Light, and some of those team members were brought on to develop this one. And if you like the story for Bravely Default, great, because it was written by Naotoka Hayashi, who wrote the story for the visual novel game Steins Gate that would later be adapted into a manga and a very well-regarded anime. It even had a stage play that would have different endings depending on what day you showed up to see it. Kind of like you had the different paths in the visual novel. Now, one of the facets of this game, Bravely Default, that I really love are the 4 playable characters you get in this game. There's the over-serious Ward of the Wind Crystal, Anya's Oblige. Unacceptable, as she would sometimes declare. Ring a Bell, the flirtatious man with a mysterious journal and a classic case of the JRPG amnesia. The easily annoyed Sky Knight defector Adia Lee with her famous cry of "Murgur" when she is annoyed. Then there's Tiz Arior, the everyman of the group, who is the sole survivor of a destroyed town, another common JRPG trope. And while not a playable character, there's also the Fairy Airy, who is a part of your group trying to help everyone figure out the mysteries of the darkness in the crystals. Now, do you love puns? This game is full of them. The 4 main character names alone are all puns. Anya's Oblige, this comes from Noblesse Oblige, the concept of nobility helping the people. Tiz Arior, well, this warrior. Adia Lee, ideally, which represents her idealistic nature. Her father, Brave Lee. Our character with amnesia, yeah. Ring a Bell, the puns are all over the place. The character interactions these 4 have with each other is half of my enjoyment of the game. Well, probably much more than half. It is some of the best I've seen in an RPG. There are even party chat options that will appear throughout the game that will enhance these interactions. The English voice acting for this game is very good too. There's people like actors like Bryce Papenbrook, who voiced Tiz. He would go on to voice lead characters in Sword Art Online and Attack on Titan. Then there's Spike Spencer as Ring a Bell, the original voice of Shinji Ikari in the Neon Genesis Evangelion series dub, not the crappy Netflix dub, and now also the sequel movies on Amazon Prime. There's also Stephanie Shea, who voices Aerie. You might remember her as Bianca in Dragon Quest Your Story. Now, as I've pointed out 2 of them already, there are some standard JRPG tropes in this game, but not only do they handle these very well, the twists and turns of the story take these tropes in a very entertaining and sometimes unexpected direction. The battle system in this game is also excellent. It's good old turn-based combat using a job system with random enemy encounters in the field. But getting frustrated with random encounters? No problem. You can adjust their frequency in a menu. You can even turn them off altogether for as long as you want. You can also adjust the game's difficulty level at will throughout the game. In battle, you have 2 special options, Brave and Default, hence the name of the game. Using Brave points, you can take up to 4 actions in a turn. You don't have 4 Brave points, no problem. You can go into the negative and still do up to 4 actions. But it is a calculated gamble, as you'll have to wait longer for your turnaround to come around again if you do that. On the flip side, you can default, where you can defend for your turn and get extra Brave points. This adds a lot of strategy to the fights, which makes it very enjoyable. As stated before, this is all supplemented by the job system. You learn new jobs by defeating bosses and getting what's called their asterisk gem. There are 24 different jobs you can learn. You can level up these jobs' active and passive abilities and bonuses by getting job points from winning battles. Now, I've left out some of the details of the job and the battle system on purpose because they all tie into a certain concept of the game, the social aspect. Through street passes or finding random people online, you can enhance many aspects of the game. The first is Tiz's destroyed town. You can rebuild his town, assigning people you meet through Street Pass or see online that can be assigned to certain tasks for rebuilding parts of the town. They become your villagers. The more people you assign to a task, the faster it happens. Rebuilding the town will give you access to different items, equipment, and even special boss battles. Another social aspect is that you can assign a friend to be a summon for an attack, as well as choose your own special attack to send out for other people to use. Not only can you do that, but you can use friends as well for your jobs. If you have a friend that's highly leveled in a certain job and you are not, you can assign his job growth to your own, and skills he or she has already learned can now be your skills as well. Going way back to the very beginning of this, I mentioned how we almost didn't get this game at all. Like with Dragon Quest VII, thanks to fan demand, we did. It blew up Square Enix's presumptions in every way. It's a traditional turn-based RPG and not a sequel to any established series. It probably won't sell well. Nope. sold 400,000 copies in Japan. The West won't care about this game. Nope, there was a huge demand, like I said, for the game that eventually led to its localization in North America and Europe. Yeah, but it probably won't sell that well overseas. No, hundreds of thousands of times nope. It sold over 600,000 copies overseas. Its overwhelming success, along with failures of other non-RPG games, actually caused Square Enix to alter its strategy by refocusing on JRPGs and its core audience instead of attempting to make games for what they thought was a global audience. They had completely underestimated the appeal of JRPGs in the West. Remember that second dark age of Dragon Quest games I had mentioned before? What do you know? We started getting the Dragon Quest mobile ports later this same year, and console DQ games again in 2015. Probably not a coincidence. So if you learn anything from this podcast, thank the French and Bravely Default when it comes to Dragon Quest in the West. Yes, oui. The only true negative to me on this game, and I know I might get some disagreement out of this, is just this one aspect of the game that annoyed me to no end, was a part of the game that repeated towards the end. I'm not trying to give away major spoilers away for this game, but you basically have to run through this group of boss battles 5 times. There's a purpose to it, but going through these battles 5 times was really, really ridiculous to me. Unacceptable, as Anya's like to say. I was murder-guring. Yes, I was murder-guring all the way through it. Beyond that, it's an excellent game. Anyone who loves turn-based RPGs should give this a shot. Now, unlike my last game, I know other people here have played this one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I've brought this up before, that I don't think I ever beat it because I got stuck on the boss rush of like refighting all of the job characters at the end. I was like level 99 with like max level jobs, and I was still just getting the floor wiped with me. Like they were wiping.
Blue can't beat the boss, none of us can.
I don't know what I was doing wrong, but I eventually was just like, this is dumb. So I mean, there was probably a better like composition of jobs that would have worked better, but I had my little balanced team, and I liked them, and I didn't want to redo them.
And if I remember right, I think there's only like a set few bosses, like the crystal ones, that you have to repeat, and I think the other ones are optional, that you don't have to go through those again, but you can if you want.
Correct, but then there's also the tower with all the human character bosses.
Yeah.
That you refight, and some of them you end up fighting multiple of them at a time, and level 99 is not enough, man.
But if you can get through that part, I thought the ending was really, really good. The way everything kind of pulled together, and like why everything, you find out like what Ring a Bell's deal is and all this other stuff that I thought was pretty cool.
Also true, yes.
Agreed. Yeah, I think I've said this a bunch of times. This is the game that in 2014, I didn't play this till 2016, right before the sequel came out. And like this game and 2 back to back were 150 hours of time that I spent wide awake in the middle of the night with my newborn.
But when you say the sequel, you mean Bravely Second, not Bravely Default 2, right?
Yes.
You mean the second game, not the sequel.
That one actually was the sequel. Bravely Default 2 had nothing to do with it. It was like the Final Fantasy 1 and 2. They had nothing to do with each other. Or Dragon Quest 1 and 2 had a little bit to do, obviously. But Dragon Quest 1, Dragon Quest 5, nothing really going on there.
Yeah, if I remember right, I don't think a lot of people were really thrilled about Bravely Second, and that's why they ended up doing
it.
Bravely
Sold
Default
about half
2.
as much.
Yeah.
I was when you were talking about sales numbers, I Googled it real quick, and worldwide it got over like 1.1, 1.2 million for the first, but or maybe 1.4, and then it was only 700,000 for the second. I like the second one. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I had fun with it too. But yeah, but they definitely were like, hey, let's go, Bravely Default 2 after what happened with second.
Yeah, we didn't have Bravely Third. They just were like, no. Let's new characters, new land, new everything.
Let's not make a third game. Let's make a second game.
Yes. Pretend the sequel never existed, and then just make a different sequel. Yeah. Alrighty, so as we're getting getting late here, Bluestar, do you have another game you want to talk about?
I don't have a whole lot. I have 2 more games on my list. I don't have a ton to say about them, but we can do some.
Go ahead and do both of them, and I'll.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do with mine at the end here.
So the first one,
even my third one up.
There's not really a whole lot to say, but the first one is Lego The Hobbit, which came out in 2014, and I love Lego games. They're a good vibe, and I love Lord of the Rings, and I love The Hobbit, and so it was just fun. I will say we had this on the PlayStation 3, and they were buggy as fuck. So they would crash all the time, but some of that was the fact that the overworld was so huge and all of this stuff. But they were just fun, and I liked them, and I saw it on the list for 2014 games, and I was like, oh, I love that game, so I had to talk about it.
Yeah,
You gonna
those
play the
Lego
Shire
games.
game.
I have seen things about it, but I have not been keeping up with it, but I am interested.
I don't like the art style for the new one.
Yeah, it looks very off.
Yeah, I'm like, if
Looks
I'm
like
going to play a farming sim, I'll play something else.
It looks like an old game they found in like a bin, and they just kind of cleaned up a bit. Like, all right, we're gonna release this game as if it's a brand new game, even though it might be from the PS2 era.
Yeah, those
Tales of
Legos-
the Shire. Mm.
Yeah, those Lego games are always a fun time. The silent humor that they have of those characters is always very inventive and fun to play.
So they have not been silent for quite some time now.
Oh yeah, they're very
I
sharp.
know. I'm sad about that because the humor that they had with nobody talking was very inventive. Like I remember I saw a screenshot recently of like one of the Star Wars games where they didn't have any voices in that one, and they have the Luke, I'm your father bit, but instead of Darth Vader saying that, he just like has a picture of like Padme. Padme. And the other guy just, here's a picture. I'm going to show it to you this way.
I played the DS versions of the Lego Star Wars games. It was I think it was Lego Star Wars 2, which was I think it was the original trilogy, and then the Complete Saga had both of them. And the second Lego Star Wars game was also very buggy on the DS. Like, it was broken in some ways. Like, I think there were some collectibles I couldn't get because the game was so messy. But they're very charming. They're very, very they're very fun to replay the levels over and over again because they're short, bite-sized, and they're very, very fun, very charming.
Yes, very charming. I would agree with that.
All right.
And what else you got?
Yeah, the other game that I have is Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls. So this wasn't the first release of Diablo 3. This was kind of like the Persona 5 Royal version of Diablo 3. So yeah, they kind of revamped the whole thing and took everything that a lot of fans didn't like about the first release of Diablo 3 and sort of tweaked it. So it was a much more balanced game at that point. I say balanced because it wasn't really that balanced, but it was better than it was. And I think I talked about this on a favorite games of the year episode a while back. I've put so many hours into this game because it's my emotional support dungeon crawler, and I love it because I don't have to think. I can just kill stuff and level up and kill stuff better and pick up lots of treasure. And that's all I need out of a game.
That's why I put on Muso games sometimes. That's, I just want to go kill 1,000 things.
When's Lego Diablo?
Maybe never.
Too many red Legos.
Too many red Legos.
I just love the idea of you saying it's like your emotional support game, but I'm thinking of like a trailer I saw at the one of those E3 conferences, or not E3 conferences they had this year, that I think was for Diablo 4. It involved like some woman's body being ripped open or something like that. In like hell or something. So
well, that's fun.
I love the contrast. Oh, it just makes me feel so cozy. Killing demons in hell.
But you do it with fireballs. It's cozy.
Hey, sometimes you just need to blow off that steam. And if people
Unintended.
get eviscerated. All right, I'll give my honorable and dishonorable mentions here. We had a whole Falcom episode, so I've talked Legend of Heroes, and if you check out my other podcasts that I do for RB Gamer, we've had whole episodes on the Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel. The second one came out in 2014. Forgot what year we're talking about, but the second one came out. And you know what? I got to play this because Evan convinced me to buy a Vita.
Oh yeah.
So, yep, I would never have gotten into I would never have gotten into all 9-10 games that I played at this point, if not for that. And golly, that Vita. I played the first 3 Trails in the Sky. I played the Crossbell duology, and this was the last one. It kind of ran out with this one when I played Trails of Cold Steel 2 on it. Because after that, I had to go to Cold Steel 3 and 4 on the Switch, or they're on PS4. But yeah, they the first like 7 games were all on Vita. And I had a blast with them on there. So this one takes place kind of during the Crossbell game. So I kind of complained to people when I was playing it. I was like, this kind of spoils, I played the Crossbell games. I'm like, the Crossbell games spoil like something that happened at the end of the first Cold Steel that I now know will happen during the second. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't really matter, because if you played Cold Steel 2, and I got to a point in Cold Steel 2 where you're on some like castle looking over at the town of Crossbell, and like, oh shit, like I know what's going on in Crossbell. I can tell you the exact moment what's going on in the Crossbell game, because you're just watching what's happening and big things are going on, and like, damn, okay, so this spoiled that, but that one spoiled this. There was no way about it. I don't know if you can play one of those games without spoiling the others, but Legends of Heroes, all good stuff. And then what's funny is we were looking at these games, and I wouldn't even probably think to talk about these, but I think about a month ago or maybe 2 months ago on the RPG Backtrack, like I said, that I co-host over on RP Gamer, we talked about dungeon crawlers. And, we, of course, at Etrian Odyssey, we're cream of the crop here. And then we went on a long rant about games that really sucked. And unfortunately, I had played a couple different 2014 games that did this. And the first was on my Vita. And this one I'm going to say thanks a lot, Evan, for introducing me to this. But not his fault for this one, but I played Dungeon Travelers 2, which was a booby game, a dungeon crawler where you get the girls with the big boobs and you go and fight. And oh my God, I must have put like 10 hours into this, and I don't know why. It sucked. It was so grindy. And actually, I probably put in more than 10 hours, because the girls all class change after a while. And it was pretty interesting that you could take whatever job they had and you could go to 2 splits. And if you went farther on in the game, those jobs then split again. So like you could be, warrior or mage, but then you pick warrior, and then after a while, you could be a magic warrior or, a super strong warrior and have that, a sword warrior or whatever, or mage. You could go light mage or dark mage. I don't know. They picked lots of different ones because there was a ridiculous amount of characters in this game, way too many, and they kept throwing new girls at you at level 1 like every few hours, and it was like, why would I want to put this person in my party? They all sucked. Girls
get thrown at me.
Yep. And then you got to go visit them in their bedrooms and rub them and whatever.
Louise.
Yeah, I think I gave up maybe after the second dungeon. I was like, I looked on like how long to beat, and I'm like, oh my God, I got 40 more hours of this. I'm not down for that. No. And years later, I would try out Moe Chronicles, which again was a 2014 Vita release, but I played the Switch release years later, and that game ended up sucking. Like, again, I gave up after about 10 hours. Kind of the same thing. I was just getting so many characters thrown at me. I'm like, I don't need all these characters. I can have a party of 4 people. Like, why do I need 24 playable freaking characters? And the way that they class change in that game is by switching outfits. And it was so hard. Like, probably 20 out of the 24, I never found another outfit. Like, I swear they were not in chests or not easy to get, and you had to increase their happiness level to do anything good, to boost their stats and whatever. It just sucked. On the other hand, though, the next year, 2015, they would release Moe Crystal, and that game was really good. I played that on Switch again, and they took all the grindy, stupid shit out of it and actually made like gameplay options that you could build affection. Like you could play a little arcade shooter, or you could do little mini dungeons for each party member that had their outfits in it. So you could get class change and mix and match their stats with different class change. It was really cool. But Moe Chronicles, the original one, Dungeon Traveler 2, and then, of course, if we're talking booby games, because I loved the dancing games so much, I think, Evan, I don't know if you mentioned this to me or one of the guys at RP Gamer, after doing all the Persona dancing games, they're like, oh, have you tried Senran Kagura Bon Appetit?
I played it. I don't know if I brought it up to you, though.
But
that game was ridiculous. Oh, my God.
I couldn't, like, on normal level, I don't think I completed but one character story. I remember downloading this or buying it, whatever, for a few bucks, right when I got like an exercise bike, and I'm like, oh, this is a good thing to sit there and just pedal and tap, 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 tap. And I think within a week I was done. I'm like, I can't beat it. I can't do anything on normal level.
I think I managed to do every girl's story. I don't remember anything about the game, to be honest with you. I remember it was each girl had like a story. Yeah. I don't even remember the gameplay at all either. I could summarize that real quick. I remember the horny old guy who like bleeds out his nose in the middle of every song whenever it was going on. It's a cooking competition, and it's 3 rounds. And if you win the first round, the girl you're cooking against, her top pops off, and if you win the second round, like she's just down to her underwear, and then you win the third round, and it's all censored and like ta-da. But like whatever, I couldn't look at any boobies or anything. I'm too busy trying to figure out what buttons I'm hitting. I'm staring at the little button thing. I think it was like the same problem with the Persona dancing games. You could dress those people up in like the goofiest outfits, but it didn't matter. I never saw them. I was too busy staring at the triangle, the box, the circle, and like I'm way too focused on that. There's no way. In this one, like I said, if I set it down to easy, I could get through everything. And I'm like, well, whoop-de-doo. There was no, for my skill level, again, I just didn't get good enough. Like there wasn't anything that I could do. If I put it on normal, I was done. And you know what? I don't know. I must have just picked the girl at the top left of the menu. And went through her story first, and then I never could beat another one. And then putting it on easy was almost like, okay, I'm just sitting here tapping a button once per second. This isn't really that fun. And whoop-de-doo, how many big boobs can I keep seeing it? There's this girl has red hair. Oh, this girl has blonde hair. Oh, this girl has an eye patch. After a while, they all run together. Yeah, they're all just different variations of colored hair and chest sizes. Yep. And there's so many. There's so many. I think there's got to be 20 of them or something. I was gonna say 2 dozen. There was something like that many, and it was just like I looked at that and I'm like, I can't even beat a second. So this game probably got about 4 hours of playtime for me, just trying to see if I could do anything to get the skill level to where it was challenging for me, but that I could eventually do it, and I just couldn't. Because like the Persona games, there's so many little things that you can do to affect the skill levels, so many little things you could turn on and off and whatever, but nope, not in this. It's a budget game with bouncing, lots of physics. But anybody else have any other either good or bad ones before we wrap this up? Man, 2014, what a year. They were quite a bit. I mean, I probably could have put a couple more in here. I had a Mario one in World Tour. I put 5 or 10 hours into that a few years ago, but there were quite a few games when I was going down the list of 2014 games that I actually played, but I probably played them in 2014, and I could not remember like half of them. I was, oh my god, I could not sit here for 5-10 minutes and describe what goes on in these games. Maybe South Park Stick of Truth, but I think that's what we've talked about like 5 times on this podcast by now. Oh, yeah, that's a great game. I finally played that last year. That was excellent. Oh, yeah, I'm playing the sequel to it right now, The Fractured Behold. Having a fun time. Yep. You know what? I'm trying to think of something else to play before Dragon Quest 3 2D HD is coming out, and that is like, that's right about like one of those 10, 15-hour games. I'm like, I could do that. Yeah, and it has like 4 or 5 different levels of difficulty that you can choose from as well. Oh, geez. And you can switch it at will. So if you run into a boss that's too hard, you can tone down the difficulty if you want. Oh, that's perfect. I love that. Was the difficulty like by skin tone or something like that? I remember there was that too. You could it was in the very beginning of the game where it's trying to create your character. If you went completely black, they warned you that hey, the game's gonna get harder if you're a black guy. Just so you know. Oh, jeez. But of course. But yeah, this was a good game. As we get more modern times, there's a lot more games just in general, and it's not remembering those 1 or 2 games I played when I was a kid. But all right, let's wrap this up. That's it for our roundup of 2014 video games. In a couple weeks, we're going to be back here taking a look ahead to what we all envision ourselves playing in 2034.
It's the far off future, baby.
Definitely.
Thank you for everybody for sharing your game memories with us.
It was great to be on again.
Thanks, Chief.
It was really fun.
Thanks, Evan.
What's going on?
All right. As I like to remind people, and Evan to talk, but as I like to remind people often, we don't crowdsource or dynamically insert ads that you don't give two shits about. We're all grown-ass adults here that like to talk about video games and other topics we enjoy. We don't need a dime of your money to do so. If you'd like to contribute to DQ Fandom, though, feel free to head on over to the Dragon's Den, donate some money to Woodus, who's paid to keep those lights on for decades now, or you can use one of his affiliate links to buy Infinity Thrash, Dragon Quest Monsters 3, or quite literally anything else on Amazon.
You can also get Dragon Quest 3 HD2D, which is coming soon too.
True. Good call, man. All right. Bye, everyone.
Sidequest come.
Whoa, wait. Stop this outro. Remember last week, Angus, I made that joke in our planning chat when I saw you had mentioned it Shovel Knight somewhere, and I put it on the list, and you were like, I never played Shovel Knight. Who said I played Shovel Knight? And I said, you know what? Fine. I'm just going to delete Shovel Knight and you. So here it is, Yangus. Delete. Let's see if you recover from that one.
Wait, what? You can't do that to me.
Much better. Now, it's SideQuest complete.